Hello and welcome back to the Outlet Podcast. I'm Gabe.
And I'm Eric.
All right, the Gabe and Eric show as usual on Fridays.
Yeah.
All right. So today we thought we'd start out with some Super Tuesday news.
Super Tuesday news, yeah. So
And,
today's Friday the 6th. Super Tuesday was 3 days ago.
3 whole days.
3 whole days. And, yeah, I mean, I think that if you watch CNN or MSNBC, you will get the impression that Biden crushed it, right? Bernie's out of the race, right? There's no chance, right? Biden destroyed, right?
Which is what I've heard.
Right. And that's the narrative that they want to push because it's in their interest, right? It's in the interest of their stockholders to align with the centrist candidate who is going to maintain the status quo and curtail the rise of this progressive candidate that wants to attack their power and take their money and use it for a more utilitarian purpose, you know? Yeah, I mean, I don't think we have to go over why the media is, in favor of Biden, right?
That's right. Bernie is so anti-establishment.
Yeah, and
that's super threatening to them because
they
are the establishment.
Exactly. They're they're in the club. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And if you're, not in the club, seeing someone be so anti-establishment is really, inspiring. You know what I mean? To see someone who's been at it for 40 years and has, maintained these principles that, healthcare is a right? Gay people deserve to live equally among everybody else, right? Fighting for expanding Social Security. I don't want to lift up.
Well, another one that black people have the right to go to whatever school they want.
Yeah, exactly.
And I
that's
it up.
That's one thing. Joe Biden. I remember seeing this quote from Joe Biden saying that I don't want my kids to grow up in a racial jungle.
He said that?
Yeah, he said that when he was a senator.
Oh my goodness, man.
Yeah, so it's it's shocking to me that he won the black vote on Tuesday, but so let's talk about Super Tuesday, right?
Yeah.
So at this
the actual
point,
event.
Yeah.
Right.
So at this point, Bernie is around 60 delegates behind Biden, right? Biden's at 300 something. Bernie's at like 280, right? And that is a really narrow gap in a primary,
That's one state.
Exactly. It's one state, and the thing is, there are still a lot of delegates that have not been assigned yet, right? And 3 of those delegates were from the states that Biden won on Super Tuesday, and over 200 of those delegates are from the states that Bernie won on Tuesday, right? California, Utah, Colorado,
Idaho.
Vermont, not Idaho.
No, he didn't.
Idaho wasn't in the.
My bad.
Yeah. Wasn't on Super Tuesday. Yeah, so as of now, there has been a delay in assigning the delegates from the states that Bernie Sanders won, and they were very quick to assign the delegates in the states that Biden won. So ultimately, I think that when it's all said and done, the race is going to be a lot closer than it was initially reported, right? Bernie Sanders won California by a large margin, and California was the state with the most delegates on Super Tuesday. And by far, yeah, and he came very close to winning Texas, right? It was virtually a tie between Biden and Bernie Sanders, which is, kind of unheard of, right? That a person who is so left wing, right, could win in a state like Texas, right?
Yeah. Well, can I put this in there?
Yeah. Okay. Go ahead.
So
this is the conversation. I don't want to keep preaching here. Yeah.
Yeah. No, of course, but it seems like if Biden wins the nominee, he is just going to get steamrolled by Donald Trump. Yeah. Like, he can't speak properly.
No.
At all.
No.
And
he said he was running for Senate the other day in a speech. Vote for me for senator.
No way.
Yeah, in his presidential campaign. Like,
did he correct himself?
No, he just kept going.
Are you seriously?
Yeah.
Jeez, man. Yeah. I mean, one thing that nominees need to do is need to convince people to vote for them for the president. Mm-hmm. And Biden, right now it seems can't speak properly. Mm-hmm. He's kind of bordering dementia. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I don't know. It seems like if he gets the nominee, Donald Trump is just surefire to win.
Yeah.
Because people are going to look at this guy and be like, he can't speak. He's not. I'm sure he's a very intelligent guy, and I'm sure he's.
Yeah, but when you get old, your brain kind of turns to mush, and especially if you've just been, doing politics for your whole career. You just got all these little phrases and keywords just floating around your head, and you just blabble those out, without just making any coherent
I'm
points.
gonna give some jobs.
You got jobs and the economy, and
Yeah.
vote for me for Senate. And I think that the Democratic establishment is willing to lose the election to Donald Trump if it means that Bernie Sanders doesn't get the presidency.
Huh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
I didn't even think of that.
Because they are pulling out all the stops, right? They get everybody in the party to, condense and align behind Biden, right? They got Buttigieg and Klobuchar to endorse him, right?
Warren too, right?
Not yet. She has not endorsed him.
Really?
Yeah, she just dropped out, and
Bloomberg. Well,
Bloomberg dropped out, and of course he endorsed Biden. They're the same guy essentially. Just Bloomberg's a richer, more racist version of Biden. But yeah, they're literally.
Can we just take a second to think about how much money was wasted?
Yeah.
From Mike Bloomberg's campaign,
Yeah,
and how little delegates he actually got
Yeah.
on Super Tuesday.
Yeah.
Like
it's $600 million, right? Which is like more than any other campaign has spent, like in a long time, and it was spent in 2 months, right?
Yeah.
He came in late, he dropped out early, right? I mean, just it's unprecedented, and I feel like that's concrete proof that the rich can be taxed. You know what I mean? Like like. If someone has that much money to just throw at a vanity project, that money could be spent in a million better ways. I mean, we could list off the thousands of things that Michael Bloomberg could have done. He could have fixed the pipes in Flint. He could have, given every homeless person in America $750 to give their, get their life back on track. He could have, cured malaria in a lot of this, the third world. He could have done a million things with that money, and instead he just spent it all on anti-Bernie attack ads.
Yeah, that, and also, I mean, if you really think about it, you just flush it down the toilet.
Yeah.
Like, all that money was spent for no reason.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, think about a $600 million investment that has zero return.
Yeah, totally. It's ridiculous. I mean, people say he's a good businessman. It's like, no, man, that was a bad business decision.
That was a massive bad. Well, I mean, look, the guy's worth what, $60 billion or something.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, it doesn't matter, right?
Yeah.
He can do whatever he wants, right?
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, in talking about Bloomberg here for a second before we go back to Super Tuesday, like people are touting the fact that Bloomberg wasn't able to succeed in the presidential primary as fact of money can't buy politics, right? You can't just go in there with money and get it whatever you want. And I think that the key difference is you can't use money to get yourself into elected office, right? But if Michael Bloomberg had spent $600 million on any other presidential campaign, Pete Buttigieg or Biden or whoever he thought would represent him the best, I can guarantee that presidential candidate, if they win the presidency, they would have been Bloomberg's puppet essentially, right?
Yeah.
Because he is the sole person who got them into that office. They are in debt to him, and they will essentially be inclined to make decisions that exclusively benefit Michael Bloomberg and his class, right?
Definitely.
So I think that the idea that, this proves that money can't buy politics is a complete farce, right?
Oh yeah.
I mean,
and
Michael Bloomberg, he spends a ton of money on Democratic politicians every year, right? Mayoral candidates, congressional candidates, and to think that he's doing that altruistically just because he supports, the cause of democracy and he likes Democrats, right? Is, if you really believe that, you have got to wake up a little bit,
Yeah, definitely.
The reason he's doing that is because it buys him influence in the party. That means that, when an issue comes up to bat that, could potentially threaten his wealth and his power, he now has a lot more say in the Democratic Party because he has an army of mayors and an army of congressmen that are in their position because of him, and they will go up to bat and act as his infantrymen in any fight that he wants them to fight in, right?
Mm-hmm. And also, when you have a Michael Bloomberg supporting another candidate, we don't see the money, right? Like, we know the Michael Bloomberg ads are being paid for by Michael Bloomberg, and we know that he's worth whatever $1 billion, $60 billion or something crazy like that. Yeah. And so we see right through Michael Bloomberg. We're like, oh no, we see you. You're just a very rich person who wants to try and buy his way into the presidency, and that's not cool, and we don't like that.
Yeah.
But I mean, if it's Pete Buttigieg and he's getting $600 million from Michael Bloomberg, right? We don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, we keep seeing all these Pete Buttigieg, whatever ads, but we don't necessarily see the dollar signs really attached to it.
Yeah,
right?
and I mean, like, technically it is public knowledge, right?
It is public knowledge.
It's reported to the Federal Elections Commission, right? But who in the media is inclined to, or what media organization is going to sit down and list the long list of billionaires that supports Biden's campaign or Warren's campaign or Pete Buttigieg's campaign? Because they are complicit in that cycle, right? If they start to call out the corruption in American politics, they will quickly find that their advertisers stop advertising on that station. They will find that the editor-in-chief comes down and fires that person, and, they will be slapped into shape again, So even though it is technically public knowledge, right? And, any American can go on the internet and look up the list of, donations and how many donations and what super PACs are backing each candidate. A lot of them don't, right? They just watch the news and they gobble up whatever they're told, and it takes a candidate in a campaign like Bernie Sanders is to really call out the widespread corruption that is at play in this Democratic primary. He is the only candidate that doesn't accept super PAC or billionaire money, right? Every other one has gotten donations from a lot of billionaires.
Yeah,
and yeah, I don't think that that's a fact that can be overlooked, I think that, we really need to pressure the Fourth Estate to do its job and regulate our democracy. And that means calling out the corruption that is at play in the presidential primary process,
Definitely. Well, it's no secret in America that since television and since this new technology that we have, it's very easy to spread your thoughts and your ideas across all platforms, right? And television has been used to influence elections, like Nixon versus JFK.
Yeah.
Right. Nixon looked all hot and sweaty up there, and JFK looked all calm, cool, and collected.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And JFK ended up winning.
Yeah.
Like this stuff, it really affects presidents.
Yeah.
And to what truly should happen is the person with the most coherent and best plan for what he wants to do with the presidency should win, right?
Yeah, yeah.
That's not the case.
Yeah.
It's not the case at all. It's really about who can debate and get the most sound bites and who looks the best in television for 30 seconds.
Yeah.
Who says that they can solve the healthcare crisis in America in 30 seconds.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
But I mean I think that's that's from the perspective of the voter, right? That's who decides what, or that's how we decide who we vote for. But I think ultimately, the people that even get up on that stage in the first place are those who build the best establishment coalition, right? Because that Pete Buttigieg has been making a lot of backroom deals, talking to a high up Democratic cadres, right? Talking to the various people in the Democratic establishment, in the media establishment, and basically giving them his pitch for being president. And that pitch is different from the pitch that he gives the American voter, right? Because, the heads of CNN and MSNBC and, the Democratic, caucus for congressional districts or whatever, high up party cadres, they have different interests than the American people, right? And in order to not just win the presidency, but gain a spot on the debate stage and gain a spot in the primary, you need to convince these extremely powerful people that you are going to be their guy.
Yeah,
right.
Definitely.
And ultimately, that means that you are putting aside the needs and wants of the American people in favor for the needs and wants of these extremely wealthy, extremely powerful organizations.
Yeah. Well, doing what's in the best interest of the people is it doesn't give you any money.
Yeah.
It doesn't provide anything to you.
Yeah.
I mean, what if you're trying to provide goods for the people, for just your average Joes out there, it doesn't impact you.
Yeah.
It doesn't help your individual.
Yeah.
But I mean, it helps the collective.
Yeah.
But what's the motivation for that?
Yeah.
Good morals?
Yeah.
Right?
I mean,
the motivation for helping the people would just be good morals. Right?
Yeah. And having
wanting
good
to see
principles. Yeah.
Good principles, good morals, wanting to see the country succeed.
Yeah.
But when you're doing these whatever it is in the interest of big business, there's actual dollar signs attached to it.
Oh, definitely.
You get this amount of money if you change the pollution laws for my company.
Yeah, yeah. And, it's often, not even that direct, right? Because, that technically is illegal, right? A company saying, I'll give you this money if you do this for me, right? That is explicit bribery, right? But I think that what happens a lot in, the American political system is sort of implicit bribery, right? Where this industry or this company or this family donates X amount of dollars to my campaign every year, right? And if I vote against their interests, they have the power to withdraw that money, right? And I think a good example of this is Elon Musk, right? And I don't want to talk about him too much, right? But he donates equal amounts of money to the Democratic and the Republican parties, both nationally and in California, right? So that means anytime an issue comes up in either party, right, where either party can vote, and that issue threatens his power and his wealth, he has the power to threaten to withhold his large campaign donations every year, right?
Jeez, man, what a smart guy.
Yeah, I mean, he's playing the game, right? But
He's
playing the game at the cost of our democracy and the health and the welfare of the American people.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's Elon Musk for you, man. He's such a smart guy. He recognizes that he can influence politics by donating to both sides.
Yeah.
And just taking away some of the money from what party votes against him.
Yeah.
Man, that's funny.
We can sit back and admire him and say, oh, that's a smart guy. Good for him.
Yeah,
right?
but it's really terrible
But
what
it's
he's
terrible
doing.
because when they're making decisions that could potentially hurt Elon Musk's wealth, oftentimes that comes at the benefit of the American working class, right? It's often one class benefits and one class doesn't, right?
Yeah.
And if they're making decisions that benefit Elon Musk and his class, it's going to hurt our class. So I think that, it's important to put it into the class perspective, right?
Yeah. It's actually pretty bad for us.
And it's extrapolated all across the nation, right? It's not just Elon Musk doing this. It's pretty much every single billionaire in this country has that sort of relationship with our political system where they, have this implicit bribery going on that anytime something comes up, they have the power to shoot it down because they make large campaign donations and they can threaten to withhold them and threaten the personal power of the individual congresspeople that
I also
are
think
debating that bill.
I think it's important to mention as well that we only see a fraction of the actual billionaires in America.
Yeah,
like we only see the Elon Musk, your Mike Bloombergs, your Bill Gates. Those are a small fraction of the actual amount of billionaires in the United States. There's tons.
Yeah.
We have tons of billionaires in the United States.
Yeah, and they're just hidden away in country estates, tucked up in the hills, and
that's right.
have their mansion.
Or they
trees,
own
right?
big sports teams. They own the LA Lakers or something.
Yeah.
Like there's a ton of billionaires out there.
Yeah,
and it's really crazy to think about how much $1 billion can really do to influence an election.
Oh yeah.
Like it's really just insane.
Yeah. And the thing is, it doesn't even take that much money to we're talking about millions and billions of dollars here, but you can buy a congressperson for, hundreds of thousands, even tens of thousands of dollars because, the amount, it's incredibly hard for politicians to rake up money and, get grassroots campaign donations from, their constituency, right? So if you donate $150,000 to a political campaign, that might just put them over the edge of their opponent, right? Because their opponent only has $20,000. We're not talking about extremely, at the national level, yeah, it is extremely large sums of money. But to buy an individual politician, it's pretty cheap, actually. And then, the benefits that you can get from that are millions and millions of dollars in, tax rebates and, reductions in regulations and, special hookups. You own this construction company. Oh, we'll make sure that you get lots of projects sent your way. This new hospital. Oh, don't worry, bro. We got you.
Yeah.
It's an incredibly lucrative system, right? Because you don't have to put that much money in, and then what you get out is extremely lucrative.
Yeah.
And once again, that comes at the cost of our democracy and the American working class. And
this is not a new trend. This has been happening in America for a very long time.
Yeah. And
for one thing I can think of off the top of my head is just, before Teddy Roosevelt, there was extreme corruption in the United States, like real bad corruption. big trusts controlling all the market of whatever,
Yeah.
and taking rebates and getting projects from the government, big construction projects. They would give them a large sum of money to get the project. This is not a new trend in America.
No.
But one if you're talking about a problem, you need to provide a solution. And what is the solution to all this? What can we do to try and limit this corruption?
Yeah. So before I get into the solution, right? I just want to say briefly that it's not like the system has gone awry or gone bad, right? This system was designed to have these institutional loopholes that allow the wealthy people of this country to sway our democracy in their favor, right? And this goes all the way back to the split between Jefferson and Hamilton.
Yeah.
Jefferson believed that our democracy should be based on the will of human farmers, right?
Yep.
Individual farmers that own their own plots of land, and ultimately, because they are free, we should make them the foundation for our democracy, and they will spread freedom upward, essentially, right? And Hamilton, on the other hand, had gone to Britain, and he had seen the Industrial Revolution firsthand, and he saw that this is the future, right? Is industry and big money and tycoons that, develop the country extremely quickly and, turn it into an industrial powerhouse. And he essentially wanted to design a government to allow those tycoons to do that industrialization extremely quickly. And essentially Hamilton won, right?
Yeah, he did.
His doctrine was the one that was adopted.
Well, and there's also and also Hamilton also spread the idea that the federal supremacy, that the federal government has complete control. And the founding documents never specified that the government should have this much control. The government now has so much more control that back when our country was founded, of course they didn't have that idea.
Yeah.
Right? They were coming from England, where tyranny was what they were living under.
Yeah.
Right? And Jefferson wanted the control of the government to be not near as extreme as Hamilton.
Yeah. But I think ultimately a big thing about Hamilton is that when he talked about government control, it wasn't necessarily an independent government, right? He didn't want a vanguard per se, a Leninist vanguard of, people that maintain their power in government who have the sole purpose of, furthering the welfare of the American people. He wanted a large, powerful government that was essentially controlled by industrialists, right? And I think that ultimately there's a big myth that has been portrayed to the American people that our founding fathers were these altruistic intellectuals that just founded this country purely out of the good of their hearts and because, they just wanted what's best for the American people. Howard Zinn, in his book, The People's History of America.
Howard Zinn is a pretty liberal historian.
Leftist. Not
a
liberal.
That's true. He's a pretty leftist historian.
Yeah. But essentially, what he talked about in the beginning of the book is that during the colonial period, there was a system of exploitation and extraction, right, where the British came in and extracted all of the wealth from the 13 colonies, right?
Yeah, and mercantilism, right? That's the idea.
Yeah, exactly. And they, extracted a lot of wealth. They was extremely wealthy. They brought out raw resources and then they sold back the finished goods back to the colonies, and it was a big market, and they made a lot of money. However, over the period of the colonies, local elites rose up. People like our founding fathers, people that were industrialists. They owned, trading companies, and they owned large plots of land, and they were farmers, and they, became incredibly wealthy within the country, right? And essentially, what Howard Zinn talks about is that they saw that they could become much wealthier if they threw off the yoke of British oppression, right? And that by cutting off the extraction done by the British Empire, they could take all of that extraction for themselves, right? And essentially they designed and set up a system that allowed them to do that extraction extremely effectively. And they portrayed it as a democracy, right, where you can vote, right? Now it was only land owning wealthy white men that could vote, right? And they designed that in order to protect their class interests. But essentially, I think that to say that our founding fathers were altruistic, heroes of the people that did it because they loved freedom and they loved democracy is a little bit naive. I think that ultimately they did it for their own interests, right? And if you look at the country right after the revolution, right, it was not a workers' paradise. It was not a free country with freedom and democracy for all. It was still structured exactly the same before, except instead of the wealth going overseas to Britain, it just maintained in the country, in the pockets, in the hands of the extremely wealthy few that set up that country.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, that's a very left perspective of the founding of our country. Yeah. I mean, I don't think it's that unidimensional. Like, to say that the whole revolution was started purely because wealthy elites wanted more money, I don't think that's a very accurate description.
I'm not saying the whole revolution, right?
Yeah, I don't know. When you say that, the elites saw that they could make more money by instead giving the resources that they were extracting to Britain, but instead, keeping it for themselves and making money off of it. While that may be true, to say that the founding fathers didn't set up a way of government that was ultimately desirable for all the people, I don't think is very accurate.
Yeah, but I mean, like, when have we ever been like a real democracy that we've been told we've been?
We haven't been a democracy. We've been a real republic.
Oh yeah,
right?
A republic, right? But what I'm saying is that the issues that you're talking about, the corruption, the graft, the greed,
it's been a part of
it's
been
written into our system, right?
Yeah, it is.
Was designed that way from the beginning.
It
right?
is. But I want to, of course, there's always flaws within any system, but looking worldwide, this is the greatest system that's ever been established, right? Purely, I'm not judging it by all the other measurements, but that it is the most economic. It's the best for creating wealth in the society.
Right.
It's the greatest for that.
But for who? Ultimately, I think that's the question, right? Because it was designed to create a lot of wealth, right? Like we talked about, Alexander Hamilton wanted to industrialize quickly, and we did, right? We spread railroads all the way from the Atlantic to the Pacific. We had workshops and factories pop up all over this country. We're exporting coal like crazy, Our cotton plantations became assembly lines that just cranked out cotton, right? But in that whole process, one class benefited and one class was left behind, right? And it's been that way throughout the entire history of America, right?
Well, there's also been good benefits for the middle class.
Right. But we have an extremely wealthy middle class. We're the wealthiest nation in the world. We live in a world of consumerism where we have a lot of cheap goods, right? But ultimately, I think that there are other countries that are, I think that, your perspective of America really depends on where in the society you're positioned, right? If you're at the top of the society, obviously you're going to think it's great, right? Because you're able to rake in millions and billions of dollars from the labor of those beneath you. And if you're at the bottom, you're told that it's the greatest, right? And you're told that it's the best democracy and the best system ever in the history of the world, right? But materially, it doesn't seem like that, right? If you're diabetic and you work a minimum wage job, you can't pay for insulin. You have to ration your insulin. Your rent is skyrocketing.
Okay, let's
not
get too far off, right?
No,
these are what you said, about insulin. That's a modern problem, and that can be fixed.
Right, but it's written into the system, like I'm saying.
I agree with you. The corruption in America has been since its founding. That is just known, right? For instance, Ulysses S. Grant. Right, he basically stole money that was supposed to go to Indian reservations.
Oh, yeah.
That was supposed to give them blankets and food. Yeah. And he basically just took their money.
Yeah.
And as a result of it, thousands of Indians, Native Americans died.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. So trust me, I know that the corruption in the United States and in the system is written in to the founding. Uh-huh. But I want to kind of shy away from saying that the founding fathers were just these big idiots who had so much wealth
I
that
don't think they're idiots.
I know you didn't say that, but
they're smart guys,
they're
right?
super smart.
And the fact that we still sit here and worship them, right? They're on all our money, right? And in elementary school, we read books about them. Oh, George Washington was so honest, right? He chopped down that cherry tree and he just told his parents that he did it, or whatever the myths that we passed down are, right? I think that it's impressive, right? The fact that they still have this high reputation and we still look at portraits of them right in the Declaration and we're like, damn, those are
people still go visit Mount Rushmore. Look,
good for them, right? And,
look,
they brought us where we are now. I think that it's impressive that they set up a system that on its face benefits everybody, and it's a democracy, and we're a federal republic, and we're for the people, by the people, right? But behind closed doors, it's really a system that benefits one class and hurts the other. I think that it was an incredibly well designed system, right? And for that, they have my admiration. When you keep saying
it benefits just the elite and it hurts the poor people, I don't think that's entirely true.
Mm-hmm.
Mainly because initially it did, right? But that's not to say that there weren't presidents who focused on farmers, right? Because that was really the divide in America, was the divide between the West and the East. The East being, you got your lumber factories, you got your textile, whatever, right? All along the coast. But in the West, you just had your agriculture, right? Your farmers, your people raising crops. And so there was a big misrepresentation for a while of whose interest, right? And the interest that got presented was the East, right? But that's not to say that we didn't have presidents who focused on the farmers, right? And initially it was set up to only help the East, but over time, through presidents, we had different movements, like the Greenback Labor Party, right? For instance, they wanted to make all money paper money instead of specie, right? And that was a movement that helped the farmers, because the farmers were in debt and they needed to pay off their debt for their tractors. You know the system, right? So to say that it's always been to help the elite, I don't think that's entirely true, because while the elite may be more represented, that doesn't mean that the interests of the small farmers hasn't been addressed, right? Because if they weren't addressed, then there would be a great divide, which is kind of what happened.
Yeah.
Right between the North and South and Civil War.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I don't know. I think it's a lot more complex than you're making it out to be.
Oh yeah, no, I'm speaking in absolute terms here, right? And obviously there's a lot of nuance in American history, right? But to me, looking back, to me, I see that we're largely in the same situation that we have been for the entire history of America, right? That our institutions and our government and our companies are set up and designed and run in the favor of those who have wealth, right? And ultimately those who do not have wealth are left with the burden, right? They are, they have to work incredibly long hours. They, don't have the money to provide for their basic necessities, right? And yeah, I mean, I just don't think that there was ever a period where, there was any sort of great equalization. I think that it's always been this way. And yeah, I don't know. I mean, Let's go.
We talk about American history. Look, man, Howard Zinn, I don't really respect the guy.
Yeah,
because I had to read some of his stuff when I was taking this class, and I don't know. He's so pessimistic.
Yeah.
About American history.
Yeah.
And it serves a purpose.
Yeah.
Right, like knowing what the worst interpretation of American history is. But I don't know. I don't like the guy very much.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. Let me hear your best parts of American history. What are the best things that the American government has done? Or the American system of government. I'll say that, right?
I think one of the greatest stories of the American system has been how Abraham Lincoln became president. Like it's such an inspiring story, right? Like this guy who grew up in Indiana or something like that. I forget. Illinois.
Yeah, he's on their license plate.
That's right. Yeah. Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, anyways, he came from a family, that was big, and they had a cabin, and he was just a poor dude, and he ended up becoming a lawyer and ended up working his way up to the presidency.
Yeah.
And then after that, I mean, we could get into the whole emancipation
Yeah.
and the whole freeing the slaves and all
Yeah,
that, whether or
yeah.
not Lincoln actually desired it.
Yeah.
But because that's kind of a debatable topic, right?
Yeah. I mean, it seems to me that initially Lincoln did not want to free the slaves. I mean, I think that that's something that has been, again, one of those myths that has been passed down, right? That Lincoln came into office to free slaves, right? But to me, it seems like he came into office, and when the Civil War started off, he just really wanted to maintain the Union. And
that was his main goal.
That was his main goal, to
keep
hold the country together. And he later adopted, the Emancipation Proclamation, just as
November 19th.
Yeah, as a sort of a justification for that war, and to bring more people into the moral cause of fighting this Civil War. But then again, I don't want to trash Lincoln.
No, obviously not. He was a very noble guy.
Very noble guy. But ultimately, I think the narrative that has been spun has been a little bit out of line. Now, obviously, you can't give all the nuances of an individual in a 5-minute history class, right?
That's right.
That's nearly impossible.
And we're not saying that Lincoln. Well, I'll speak for myself. I'm not saying that Lincoln didn't want to help the slaves in America, because that was. I don't think that's debatable.
Yeah.
Right? He definitely wanted to help them, but whether or not that was his primary cause,
that's up for debate.
Yeah, because I feel like his primary cause was just to reunite the United States.
Mm-hmm.
But aside from that, there's been a lot of American stories that are just very inspiring and
Yeah, but that's the story of an individual.
Sure,
know what I mean?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean I get that, but as a whole, I feel like those stories help inspire the population to strive for something better.
Mm-hmm.
And without those stories, the American people, you can't really look up and say, I want to be like that. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it's, it's debatable whether or not the society, the American society, has been set up to help the poor class,
mm-hmm.
right? And whether or not it's been beneficial to the poor class. I mean, there's been some movements where it was, like the labor union, that was strictly for the American worker.
Right. But the American government curtailed it and fought it as hard as it possibly could, right?
But it ended up winning.
Right, because it was a progressive grassroots movement, with genuine morals, and I think that we're seeing sort of a revival of that today. In the Bernie Sanders campaign, is that the American people are tired of this, right? They're tired of the status quo, and they're tired of our system not working for the working people of this country, and they are fed up, right? And they are going to push away from that. That's why Donald Trump got elected into office. It's because the status quo doesn't work for everyday Americans. And Bernie Sanders is just another iteration of that anger and that push against the status quo that says, we're fed up. We're tired of it. We're not going to take it anymore. And we're tired of these centrists running on, supposedly progressive policies and then not changing anything, right? They maintain the status quo that hurts the working people of this country and uphold the wealth of the incredibly wealthy few at the cost of the overall welfare of our country. And there's always this cycle, right? I feel like, every 2 generations or so, every third generation gets fed up, right? You saw it in the 60s. You saw it in the 20s. You're seeing it now, of people that realize just how fucked up our status quo is, and realizing that, listen, we can't just sit by and allow our politicians to do what they promise to do. We need to take the reins ourselves, and we need to demand the change that we want to see happen in this country, right? And at every point in those times, during every populist movement, the establishment pulls their guns out, right? You saw it in the 60s, right? All the media was trashing the Vietnam War protesters, trashing the civil rights protesters,
trashing the college students,
trashing those college students, right? But ultimately, they won out because they had grit and they had determination, and they know that the fight for a better society is not an easy one, right? You need to raise up your arms and not let them beat you down.
Yeah, workers of the world unite, right?
Yeah, exactly. I think that ultimately that's the lesson we need to take away from Super Tuesday, is we cannot let them beat us down so easily. We're not that far behind, and I think that it's a hard fight, but it's a fight worth fighting. And I want everybody go out to the phone banks, donate your money, right? Because this is a
give me your money
movement and a fight that we can't give up easily, because it's a hard fight, and anything worth achieving isn't going to be easy. Right.
Yeah.
And if we
anyone
let them
who proposes a very easy, simple solution to a very complex problem, be wary of.
Yeah.
But man, that's so inspiring.
I got fired up, bro.
It's inspired.
I'm like it's back, bro. It's 60s again, dude.
Okay, but I mean, talking about like the 20s, real quick. During the labor movement.
Yeah.
You were completely right. The American government and big business owners hated the unions. Like they straight up brought in Pinkerton,
and they killed him, bro.
They seriously killed
him.
Do you remember there was a riot? We should pull up the laptop to try and fact check this. There was a riot under who's the steel guy?
Carnegie.
Yeah. So there was a big like a huge labor movement to just not work at the Carnegie factory or whatever, and they ended up sending in Pinkertons.
I got no internet, bro. What's your internet?
Yeah, we'll do this on the podcast.
Here, do it. But yeah, tell me something about the labor movement. All right, so I'm gonna tell you about another battle, right, that happened, because the thing is, in recent times, the clashes between the people and the establishment have been relatively peaceful. That being said, Black people do get murdered every single day at the hands of police, and it's not peaceful,
like
right?
That. Well, I mean, why are you making it out like that?
Because it's not. It's still.
It happens.
It's not peaceful.
It happens, but I don't think it's the majority.
I don't know, man. All the videos I see.
That's a very complex issue.
Yeah. But ultimately, I think that it is something wrong, right? There is something fundamentally wrong with the police brutality that Black Americans experience every single day, and I think that as white Americans, we cannot, by being neutral, we're taking the side of the oppressor. Right, and we have to listen to Black people and the stories that they tell, and the narrative that they portray, which I ultimately believe is a true, honest narrative. And I think that we need to be sympathetic, and by being neutral and not doing anything, we're ultimately taking the side of the oppressor.
I'm sympathetic for police brutality against Black people.
Yeah,
like I am.
Yeah,
but to say that,
but
to say that, like, I don't know. There's this weird narrative being pushed that there's just a Black kid walking down the street, and then a white cop pulls them into the car, beats them down, and then pulls them into the car and takes them to jail. Yeah, that's not what happens.
It's happened plenty of times, bro.
Okay, it's happened in the past. I'll grant you that, but that's not what happened. That's not what's happening now.
Oh no, it happens all the time, man.
To say that a Black kid is just walking down the street, and then a police just beats him up and then pulls him into the car for no reason.
Yeah.
That's the narrative that I think is being pushed, and I don't think it's accurate. I just don't think it's true.
Yeah, I mean, I think.
And I'm not sympathetic. It's not that I'm not sympathetic.
Yeah,
because I am sympathetic.
I think you'd be surprised, bro. Like, there was this case of Freddie Gray in Baltimore, right? This was a guy that was
Baltimore is the head of the Baltimore police. The police chief is Black.
Right. That doesn't mean that the police department's not racist.
Okay. But to say that the establishment in Baltimore is run by a bunch of white, people who hate Black people, I don't think is accurate, right? Do you get what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, no.
To say, because but here's what's being pushed is that there's so much power in the hands of these police chiefs. And look, I'm not trying to defend police brutality. Let me make my position clear. I think police brutality sucks. Like, it really sucks. Yeah. But to say that that Black people aren't represented in Baltimore is unfair.
I mean, I don't think it's a question of representation. I think it's a question of the material reality that Black people face in Baltimore every single day, right? And that is a reality of oppression and violence and systemic poverty, right? That has been perpetrated by the government in Baltimore. Now, it's a democratic city, right? They've had democratic mayors for the past 30 years, right? But that doesn't mean that they're good Democrats, right? It means that, I don't know, I can't really speak on Baltimore specifically.
Yeah, I don't
too
know
much,
about
right?
Baltimore,
Yeah,
but I do know.
But it seems like there is a systemic problem there, and I think that ultimately, the reason that the Black community in Baltimore is so, poor and in poverty it's not their own fault, right? It's the fault of the system and the institutions that they're governed by, right? The system of mass incarceration that puts young black men into prison for menial crimes, right?
Look, I'm not saying it doesn't happen.
We wouldn't even consider crimes here in California, right? You know, you're carrying a 20 sack, right? You get thrown into jail for 15 years. Now all of a sudden you are thrown into a life of criminality.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that should happen. What I'm purely saying is that bad cops exist.
Mm-hmm.
They're out there and they suck.
Yeah.
And I think they should be out of the police unit. Like, it's really easy to become a police officer. Like, incredibly easy. You go do criminal justice and for 2 years or something. You go through basic training of a police officer. Boom.
Yeah.
You have power over all citizens. I don't think that's good. I think they need more training. I think they need better, better mental treatment. You know, like, I'm not sitting here defending bad police. I don't think you think I am.
Yeah.
But to say that black people are just walking down the street and a white cop comes and beats them up and then pulls them into the car is a bad misrepresentation of what's happening.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I think the majority of police officers are good.
I've seen videos, man. I mean, on Reddit yesterday on r/public freakout, right? There was
I think I saw this.
A plainclothes police officer, right? That had a black man up against the wall and was holding a taser against him, right? And he was yelling, "What did I do? Am I being detained? What crime did I commit? Right? What did I do? Right?" And this guy, the officer, was not responding. He was just holding him there and calling for backup, right? This guy was demanding to know what exactly he did, why he was in that situation.
And they're obligated by law to tell them.
To tell them, right? Am
But
I
they
being
don't.
detained? You have to answer, right?
Yep.
If you're a police officer, right? And this guy wasn't, right? And then all of a sudden you see 3 squad cars pull up, right? And police officers coming running out of these cars, right? And this guy, he doesn't have a weapon. He's not being threatening. He has his hands up. He's just demanding to know what crime he committed. And these officers tackle him to the ground. There's 6 of them on top of this guy who's not being threatening. He doesn't have a weapon. I don't know what their purpose was. And they were punching him, kicking him, right? Pulling at him. Stop resisting. Stop resisting. This guy was on the ground with 6 guys on top of him, right? How is he resisting, man? He's not fighting back.
Well, okay.
And when you have 6 cops pulling at a guy, it seems like he's resisting because he's being pulled in all directions, right? But ultimately, he's just laying there like a rag doll, and he's just being abused by the people that are supposed to be protecting him.
Yeah.
And I think that it's just one story, right? It's this individual
I'm not
story.
saying it doesn't happen,
right?
'cause it definitely does happen.
But I think that we need to extrapolate, right? Because that situation happens every single day all across America to innocent black people all over this country.
Yeah.
Right. So I think that saying, right, there's good cops, right? It doesn't happen every day. Not every single black person might have, experienced this kind of thing. Doesn't mean that we have a systemic problem of racism in our police department in this country.
Yeah. Okay. Well,
and I think that one solution, right? Not a solution to the problem of
is democratized police.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think so. Whenever you see this sort of case happen, right, where an innocent black teenager is shot. He was unarmed. He had his hands up, and he was shot dead by a police officer. What happens immediately is that police officer that's a murderer goes into quote-unquote internal investigation.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I think that's something that we need to eliminate. I don't think that there should be internal investigations anymore because cops act like a gang, right? They protect their own. They stand up for their own. And especially large established police departments like the NYPD or the LAPD, right? They are extremely unlikely to indict one of their own because they look at it as a little club. And if Tommy gets busted for doing something bad, maybe I get busted for doing something bad because we know we've all done something bad at some point, right?
Yeah.
I think that we should end internal investigations. It shouldn't be the police policing themselves. I think that we should have an external prosecutor, someone like a civil rights lawyer who takes a look at these cases and decides externally what should happen to these police officers that are murderers and oppressors, and they should be elected by the community that they're representing, right? So that way the community has a say in how they are policed and how they want to be treated by their police officers. Yeah. Right?
So one phrase that I like to use when I'm talking about police is we pay them to steal our money.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Because, think about it. Police officers are paid for by tax dollars. If you're a tax-paying citizen, you pay for police officers. and then the police officer turns around and gives you a $300 ticket for speeding. We pay them to steal our money. And I think there's a real problem with the judge, the police officer, and the person who's being, the person who got the ticket, right? Because the police officer goes to the judge and says, I saw him, he was going 75 on a 65, right? And the word of that person ultimately gets taken to the judge and says, we're going to make sure this person actually has to pay this $300 ticket, because if he does, that means I get more money and you get more money and we fill our quota.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that is so messed up.
Yeah.
Because it's this cycle of police officers always telling the judges, what happened, and there's no say. Because, I mean, you think about it, like, I don't know the actual number, but of people who try and, like, fight traffic laws, fight whatever, what percent of them actually get found not guilty of whatever?
It's low, right?
It's probably extremely low.
Yeah. And the thing is, the poor working people of this country have much less mobility to fight those laws, to fight those traffic tickets, because, one, they don't have time, right? Because they have to work 12 hours a day to support their family, right? At a minimum wage job, right? Yeah. And they don't have the disposable income necessary to hire a good lawyer, right? And I think that's, one broad thing in the American justice system is that money buys better treatment for the individual, right? Yeah. If you're a millionaire, you can hire really, really good lawyers to defend you in court, and you are much more likely to get found not guilty for whatever crime, right? And not only that, if you don't have money to pay bail, right, the initial bail that you get set up for a crime, you either have to get a bail bond, which always has incredibly high interest, right? And even if you get found not guilty, you're getting punished by these private, greedy bail corporations that just extract money from the poor working people of this country. So if you're poor, you either have two options, right? Get a bail bond and get fucked by interest for the rest of your time that you're not in jail, right? Or you remain in prison until your hearing, and that means that you go into your court in the garb of an inmate, right? Which automatically signals to the jury this person is a criminal, right? Because when you see somebody in an orange jumpsuit, most likely, even if you say that, no, I'm going to be a fair juror, I'm going to do my best to, look at the facts of the case, immediately your mind associates that person with criminality, right? Yeah. So I think that those, the bail system and our private lawyer system are two glaring examples of how our justice system is skewed in favor of the wealthy and against the poor working people of this country.
Yeah, that's a real problem. I think there's kind of this idea that all juries are like 12 Angry Men. Have you ever seen that movie? Mm-hmm. You have?
Yeah.
It's not like that. I mean, first off, do I really want 12 people who I don't know, who I've never met, who could be just pieces of shit? Do I want them really deciding whether or not I go to jail for 30 years or not?
Yeah.
Like, it's so ridiculous. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I mean, there's a lot of problems with, American court system and all that. First off, people don't have that much time. Yeah, I'll grab me some coffee.
Yeah.
I don't know. It really seems like to me that.
Thanks.
It really seems like to me that when you have. Let me put this in here real quick. Have you ever heard of police militarization?
Oh yeah.
So there was a book that this person wrote, and I didn't read too much of it, but it really talks about how in America there's a real problem with police becoming like the military. Mm-hmm. Because after World War II, we had an excess of military equipment. Mm-hmm. Big police vests, big guns, big AR-15s, and another thing. Do you know the Hollywood shooting?
No, elaborate.
I don't know if it was Hollywood, but I think it was somewhere in California. These people robbed a bank, mm-hmm. right? And instead of just robbing it with like a handgun, mm-hmm. they brought in like full metal jacket, big bullets, big guns, mm-hmm. big not police vest, but big, ballistic vest or whatever they call it, yeah. Bulletproof vest, and they had body armor all the way across their body. And this shooting, they basically just went in there with like army grade equipment and robbed the place. Mm-hmm. And all these police went with their dinky handguns circled it, and we're expecting, hey, come out with your hands up, and these people were just going to walk out. But no, they just opened fire on police officers with big AR-15s with bullets that pierce through cars, right? And that really changed how the police view how they fund their what guns and what weapons and what materials they give to their police officers, because that's a real threat now.
Yeah.
Like people just showing up with bigger guns and better armor and robbing a place.
Yeah.
And the police can't do anything.
Yeah.
And so that happened. And when that happened,
which they can all buy legally.
They can. They
right?
sure can.
You can buy as big an AR-15 as you want right now, right? Yep. So I think,
that's
one argument for gun control is that it protects police officers, which I don't really care about.
I don't believe it.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, there's already enough guns out there that even if we banned assault weapons, people would still find them. But that's
let's make
right?
Let's make it harder for him to get it. Let's put up one institutional barrier to protect our police officers, which I don't really think is a great argument because fuck those cops, bro. But
anyways, But what I'm really getting at is
sorry.
I think we talked about the Stanford prison experiment.
Yeah.
Right, which is they wore those aviator sunglasses that were reflective, and it kind of made them feel like a part of a group. They all had the same uniform, right?
Yeah.
I feel like that's what's happening in the American military right now. And of course, there were a ton of flaws with the Stanford Milgram experiment, but not Stanford Milgram, Stanford prison experiment.
Yeah.
Milgram was a different guy. I feel like that's something that's happening in the American police station now is you have all these police officers who are wearing the same uniform, driving the exact same car, wearing the exact same clothes.
Yeah.
They all have badges that make them feel, empowered, whatever.
I'm authority.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. I got authority over these citizens.
Yeah.
And they all carry the exact same guns. And when you have a group of people like that, you fall into this group think idea, right? Where I got to do things that are good for my group, right? And if one police officer is doing something bad, then I need to protect this bad police officer because he's part of the clan.
Yeah.
Right. And I feel like there's this downward spiral. And another thing, I lived in a little town called Aurora, Colorado. It's not a little town. It's maybe 200,000 people or so. But the police, the police, there were so many police officers, right? And I did live near the police station, but so the police station was connected to a library, and I would go over to the library every once in a while, read a book, whatever. And I could see into their garage that they had, and in their garage they had a tank, like an actual tank.
Yeah.
Like I'm not talking, like just a car that had armor.
Yeah.
Like it was a real full on tank, like with the
with
big
treads. Yeah.
with treads,
Yeah.
with the big missile,
Yeah.
not big, thing at
Yeah,
the front.
yeah,
Like it was
yeah.
an actual tank.
Big pole.
Yeah. I don't know what it's called.
Yeah.
The shaft of the tank. I don't know.
Yeah.
Anyways, dude, they had this massive tank in the garage.
Yeah.
Why the hell does the police need a tank?
Yeah.
What are they gonna do? Run over someone's house?
Yeah, I mean, and that's what they did, bro. Like in the late 90s and
After
early
World War II,
2000s, right? Under Clinton and the expansion of the drug war, basically the police got unlimited power to do whatever they thought to stop drugs, right? So if the police suspect that this house is a trap house, right? They're making drugs here, they're selling drugs here, they have the jurisdiction to literally knock the walls down with a tank and just go in guns ablazing, regardless of there's kids in there, there's families in there, right? And there were tons of people that died. Going back to Baltimore, they blew up an entire apartment complex, right? They said they were, just trying to blow up this one apartment in the complex, right? And knock the walls down.
It started a fire in the place, right?
It killed like 7 people just from the bomb blast alone, right? Because when you blow up an apartment, the entire apartment building goes down. That's not how buildings are supposed to function, right? You can't just knock down some of the walls and expect the whole thing to stay up, right? So 7 innocent people were murdered by the police department because they thought they had the authority, and they were given the authority to do whatever they wanted.
And what happened as a result of that?
Nothing. Yeah. I mean, like, yeah, they killed the people that were in the apartment that they wanted to, but our laws don't say that there's a death penalty for dealing drugs, right? Why are the police allowed to dispense justice on their own? They think that these people should die. That's not how our laws are written,
Not only that, but first off, like I mentioned earlier, these are badly trained police officers. Like, do you really think they should be handling bombs and tanks?
No,
No, I don't think it's, and who's making sure that they're up to the standards? Who's keeping these police officers in check?
No one. It's just
look, and I know I'm kind of making a weird argument because I mentioned earlier, like, police are they're whatever, they got to help. They hurt black people, right? They hurt, they're bad cops out there, but ultimately they're good.
Yeah.
I'm making kind of a weird argument here.
Yeah.
Right. But what I'm really trying to say is they're unchecked. There's no one monitoring the police system.
Yeah.
And there should be someone monitoring the police system.
Yeah.
Because if you leave it unmonitored, well, who makes the rules and who delivers the justice? Right. I don't know. It really seems like in America that we have a mental health problem and we have a real anger issue. Like, we just want to dispense justice on everyone.
Yeah.
Right. And I feel like there's some people who become police officers because they're just mean and bitter and angry.
Yeah.
And then they take out that anger on innocent citizens.
Yeah. Yeah. And
I don't know. I'm making a weird argument.
No, I agree with it. I think that a lot of the people that go into police departments in the first place, they feel like they lack authority in their own lives, right? They lack autonomy, they lack authority, and so they look to find authority some other way. And having a badge and uniform automatically gives you authority, and they feel like if they're feeling angry or depressed, they often take that out on the people that they're supposed to be protecting and helping, right?
Yeah. And this, like, I'll be driving down the road and I'll see a police officer and I'll go 10 and 2 and get all stiff.
Yeah, exactly.
And fear them. Seriously.
Yeah. And
fear.
That's not the way it's supposed to work. They're supposed to be there to help us and protect us, right? Yeah, and I think that, once again, coming back to it, we need to have a democratic system that keeps police in check, right? And that means ending internal investigations and making them external investigations that are ultimately democratically controlled, so that the people in a community can decide themselves how they want to be policed, right?
I think that's reasonable.
Yeah. It seems like a simple step, but no police department in this country has taken that step, right? It's all internal investigations. It's all police deciding for themselves how they should do things, and investigating their own. And it doesn't. The people in the community are not in that cycle of justice at all. There's no responsibility. There's no democracy in the system at all. Yeah. I don't know. You want to say anything more about cops? Ultimately, the thesis is fuck them. Fuck all those cops.
Look, man. Well, you know what happened with the during the Vietnam protest on college campuses.
Yeah.
Like, do you remember that? Kansas State. They just went in and killed people.
Yeah.
It's like, who's to say that can't happen again?
Yeah, and it does happen all the time, bro. Like, you look at the Ferguson protests, protesting the murder of Michael Brown. Tons of people were injured and some were killed, right?
LA riots, like, that happened.
Yeah.
I forget what the Watts riot or something like that. Watts.
Yeah. I mean, all of LA was lit up because of the people were fed up with police brutality, and they had no way to electorally or democratically strike back at the police.
So they just
took it into their own hands and started smashing stores and
pulled that truck driver out because he was white and beat the shit out of him.
Yeah.
Look, man,
that's what happens when you leave these social problems to fester, right? And you don't take any steps to address them, right? Is that you get violence, right? And if we sit back and just put our fingers in our ears and say that everything is okay, the status quo is fine, that's what happens. Is that the hate and the decades of oppression and violence experienced by a community comes forward, and people are so fed up with experiencing violence that they feel the need to be violent towards others, right? And so I think that we really need to address the systemic problems that we have in America for the betterment of everyone. Even if you're not part of a group that experiences police brutality, it is in all of our best interests to address these problems, because ultimately, as Americans, we should have sympathy and stick up for others, even if we don't experience it personally, right? That's part of any moral doctrine is the golden rule, right? Treat others the way you want to be treated.
Yeah.
And that means fighting for those who have not, right? And so it's I feel like it's all of our responsibility,
well,
to end police brutality in this country.
I mean, look, the American police system, they got to do a lot. They got to deal a lot more than any other country, because first off, our gun deaths and, our people who own guns is so great in America. Like, they're always on the defense because they never know if another person has a gun, because they probably do have a gun. According to statistics, right? There's more guns in America than there are people.
Mm-hmm.
That means that there's more than one gun per person in America.
Yeah.
Right? So, I mean, they're always on the defense, and there's a real mental health problem in America. Like, that's pretty apparent. Like, we just have mental health problems. And so these police officers have to be on the defense. And the problem is when they switch to offense, right? When they go out and seek for people who are doing these bad things and openly try and attack them in a certain way.
Yeah.
So as long as the police officers stay on the defense, okay, that's fine.
Yeah.
Right? As long as the defense is being checked, as long as what they're doing is actually being, defending the citizens from bad people, right? But when that switches and they're openly trying to seek out people who aren't doing anything terrible, selling a little weed, right? That's when it becomes a big deal. And I think it can be limited by, laws and just passing bills and laws that say, you can't beat the shit out of someone for having 2 grams of weed.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't know.
But yeah, I mean,
And if you think about it across the world,
yeah,
especially in Africa, police officers accept bribes. Like in America, I'm pretty sure we don't accept bribes. Like I can't just hand a police officer like $100 bill and say, "Yeah, fuck off." Who cares? I was speeding. But in all across the world, they do accept bribes. Like I told you that story about my brother who was in Kenya and he was driving down the road and he got pulled over and he gave the police officer a bribe and he let him go.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, on a world standard, we're doing pretty good with our police officers on a world standard. But internally, there are tons of improvements.
Yeah.
Closing remarks?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that talked about cops a lot, bro. And I think that we do have a real police brutality problem in this country, right? And we cannot sit back idly and just wait for it to go away, because by doing that, we're taking their side, right? We're saying that, it's bad, right? But ultimately, if we're not doing anything about it, if we're not in the streets and protesting about it, it's going to remain the same, right? So I think it's all of our responsibility to voice our opinion and to let those in power know that we're not going to stand by and let this happen anymore, right? We need to take direct action and attack this problem at its core, right? And that means being vocal about it. It means not sitting idly by and holding our opinions to ourselves. It means being loud, being disruptive, and doing everything that we can to attack this problem, And I'm speaking in vague terms here because I don't want to call for violence, right? But yeah, I think that we need to take direct action, right? And if you want to join me tomorrow at 2, there's a protest down at the police headquarters.
Really?
To protest the murder of a mentally ill man down in City Heights. I'm gonna be
really.
Yeah. Join me, Gabe.
Protests don't do anything.
Yeah, but I mean, what are the alternatives, right?
Exactly.
We can't do anything electorally, right? The Democrats and the Republicans, don't take hard stands on these issues, right? So it's not like we can really make any effective change with our votes, right? So if we can't do it electorally, I think that we need to take direct action, right? And the first step is protesting, right? And like you said, protests don't do much.
Yeah.
Right.
But I say they don't do anything.
Yeah.
They do something.
Yeah. But the next step after that, I don't really want to say it, But it's violence.
Uprising.
It's violence. You know what I mean? And so if this sort of direct peaceful action doesn't work, we're going to be forced to take the next step. And I don't want to consider that option.
No, I don't. Right? I don't even think that is an option.
Right. But I just cannot sit idly by and let this happen. It just doesn't fit with my morals, And like you said, protests don't do anything, right? But it's something,
Yeah,
right?
they at least raise awareness.
Yeah, it raises awareness, and it lets the police in San Diego know that we don't accept them, right? We do not tolerate, and we do not, condone this sort of violence against the people of San Diego.
Yeah, I think people are just too busy to go to protest.
Yeah,
Like I feel like that's one of the reasons why they don't actually go out there and really actively protest what happened.
Mm-hmm.
I think people are just too busy to say, oh, a mentally ill man was killed and we don't support this. Yeah, well, I'm sure if you said that to a bunch of people, they'd all agree. They'd be like, yeah, that sucks.
Yeah.
But they don't have enough time. They got jobs. It's Friday. Well, they're going to dinner. You know what I mean? Like,
it's on Saturday.
Saturday.
Too, right?
Saturday too.
Join me, Gabe.
Yeah, well, I don't know. Like,
I think that it's it's easy to come up with excuses, right? I think it's very easy to say, oh, I'm busy. I gotta do all this stuff.
Can you imagine
right?
if 10 million people showed up to the protest?
Yeah, then there's something would have to change. I believe. You know what I mean?
I don't know if something would, but I mean,
we could just burn that police station to the ground.
Yeah, we could just kill all the cops.
Yeah.
Anarchy. No, I don't know, man. Let's move on from the topic because I feel like we've talked about police enough.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You want to talk about a little bit of Corona?
I don't know.
You want to grab some beers?
What are some developments?
Well, I've heard that it's not near as drastic as being portrayed.
Yeah.
And that one of the reasons why it's being portrayed is for political reasons.
Yeah.
Because like you had mentioned earlier, you said, Mike Pence, the gay man himself. I'm just kidding. He's probably not gay. He looks gay, but
I don't know, man. All the biggest homophobes, they always got some secrets. I feel like that outward hatred always comes from some internal hatred.
Dude, I was just thinking about @Ted Cruz. Have you seen that? Have you seen those? No. Comment etiquettes?
Oh yeah.
Okay, never mind. That's besides the point.
Yeah.
But Mike Pence, the gay man himself, he's handling the coronavirus. I say gay man himself, jokingly. But yeah, he's handling coronavirus, and I feel like it's kind of being pushed by the Democratic Party that he's not doing shit, and he's actually doing a lot. And sorry, I'm speaking in vague terms again.
Like what? Yeah,
because
it seems like to me, America's response and China's response are complete opposites.
We talk about North Korea's response.
Right?
That's the most drastic.
Just kill the guy.
Just kill them.
Yeah.
Are they actually doing that, by the way?
North Korea?
Who knows, man?
I mean, they kill like thousands of people every day. You know what I mean? It's not a big step just to kill someone for them. You know what I mean? That's just daily practice. Yeah. But let's compare China's and America's response.
You make an omelet.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm kidding.
Exactly.
I hate that. I hate that term.
Yeah. But in China, the Communist Party, and I think that this is one of those examples where the Chinese system of government is a lot more functional and a lot more responsive than the American system of government, because the Chinese government, the CCP, has the power and has the ability to pull out all the stops to stop this virus, right? They literally shut down all transportation in areas that are infected, right? Say, you cannot leave the house, right? We'll deliver food to you with drones, right? But we're going to put cops and military officers on the street making sure that people do not move, right? We're going to shut down all the trains. We're going to shut down all the businesses. You're not allowed to go to work. You're not allowed to leave the house, and it has led to a significant drop in the number of infections, right? And they are able to make everything much more efficient, right? Because when the Communist Party sets a goal, they're able to achieve that goal incredibly quickly, right? They say, we want to get as many people tested as fast as possible. And they've done over 40,000 tests since the start of the virus, right? And in America, you know how many tests we've done total? 700, right? We've tested 700 people, right? And in comparison to 40,000, now I know that there's a difference in time scale, right? The virus has only reached America recently, and it's been in China for a couple months now. But the Chinese government and the Chinese system of government has the ability and the levers of power necessary to make broad, drastic changes in the face of a large foe like this, as opposed to the American system. There's no way state governments or the federal government could just tell people in affected areas, you're not allowed to go to your business, right? You're not allowed to go to work today. You're not allowed to leave the house, right? That would be an infringement on individual rights, right? And people are going to leave the house if they want to, right? Because that's, what America's all about is individual freedom. But I think that this is one of those examples where the Chinese system of government is able to deal with a broad, drastic threat in a much more effective, efficient way than the American system of government. I mean, tell me what Mike Pence has done. You know,
Mike
what
Pence,
what are the steps that we've taken?
Well, I don't know the steps, but he said we've taken adequate care of the cases in America. Like, that's what he said. And he said we've used all our resources that we can, and the president as well has used all the resources that we can to stop this virus. And I mean, you know, like, I don't think that would just be such a big lie of him to say that. And I don't know if he is lying. But here's the thing. What I really want to get to is how drastic this is. Because what I want to, you know, kind of try and understand is why is this all that we're seeing in the news every single day? Is it because the Democratic Party is using this as some political maneuvering? That's really what I want to know. Is like, why is all the media, all they're talking about is the coronavirus? Because it really doesn't seem near as deadly as it actually is. Because there's been something like 8,100 cases.
It was like 40,000, bro.
Oh, 40,000, my bad. Yeah, 40,000
like
cases.
3,000 people had died.
And 3,000 people died of the 40,000 cases, right? So it's not, I don't know, it feels like people have this weird misrepresentation of that if anyone gets infected, they're dead.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think that that's the ultimate fear, right? But
it doesn't hurt it doesn't hurt young people too.
Yeah.
Like, they're finding that it's mostly old people,
right?
Which is good, right? Because
fuck them. We don't need
they're dead.
Bro.
They're gonna die.
They're retired. They're not contributing, right?
I'm just
get them out of here.
I'm not saying. I'm not saying all life is sacred.
All life is sacred, right? Of course. Right?
But what I'm really saying is
yeah. So I think that the big reason why that's all you're seeing in the media is because that's what people want to hear about, right? When a pandemic is spreading, people get fearful. People get paranoid, right? And you know, doing a news report on how horrible and drastic the coronavirus is going to draw eyes, right? And ultimately, our media is private, and their goal is to get as many viewers as possible, so that those viewers watch advertisements, right? And it's in their best interest to, you know, draw eyes in the most effective way. That's why they show police chases, right? That's not news, right? It doesn't really affect, you know, people's lives, right? A police chase, right? But it draws viewers, right? It's exciting to watch, you know, a Mustang speed down the highway, and, you know, a trail of cop cars chase them, and, you know, the police helicopters giving reports. Where are they turning? What are they doing, right? Because
it's interesting.
Yeah, the media does that because it draws viewers. It draws people to watch advertisements, and it's the same thing with the coronavirus, right? You know, that cop, or, you know, the car chase doesn't really affect their lives materially, right? But it draws viewers, right? And it's the same thing with the coronavirus, right? It may not have that much of an effect on, you know, everyday Americans at this point, right? But because people are paranoid about it, right? You know, just the fact that it's called a pandemic will automatically make people paranoid about it. They're much more likely to watch a news report on coronavirus as opposed to, you know, a news report on, you know, burglaries in their neighborhood, right? Which might have a much more immediate effect on them and their material wealth at the moment, right?
Interesting. Yeah, well, I don't know.
So I don't think it's to benefit the Democratic Party.
Well, I think it is in some ways, because what it seems like they've been doing. Well, first off, the media is primarily aligned with the Democratic Party. Can you agree on that? No? Do you think the Republican Party owns most of the?
I don't think that. I mean, I think that, you know, ultimately they take liberal stances, right? You know, the cadre of centrist media, you know, CNN, MSNBC, you know, ABC News, all those guys, right? You know, CBS, they take relatively liberal issues on cultural issues, right? When we're talking about abortion and gun control and, you know, those issues that we've talked about many times, right? But when it comes to actual leftist issues, right, populist grassroots movements like the Bernie Sanders campaign, they take a hard stance against it, right?
Yeah. Okay. Well, that, I guess, yeah, Bernie's kind of an anomaly in this. What I'm really trying to say
I think that, you know, any sort of left wing movement, they immediately villainize them, right? Like when they were reporting on the Ferguson protests, right? All they showed were people in masks smashing windows, and they portrayed them as thugs and villains, right? That were destroying the moral base of American society, or, you know, whatever pitch it was that they had, right? But they So they pretend to take a left-wing view on certain issues, right? But then when it comes to the actual issues that affect the material wealth of the American people, they always take a centrist / right-wing view, right? Because it is in the best interest of their owners.
Sure,
right?
but could I say that they're aligned with the Democratic Party?
Right. Yeah. I mean, the Democratic Party does the same thing, right?
Okay.
That they take a left.
Yeah, they're not real.
View.
They're not real Democrats. Like
they're not real leftists, right?
They're not real leftists.
I mean,
they're not trying to spread. They're not trying to spread democratic ideals.
No.
They're trying to maintain power,
uphold the status quo.
Yeah, exactly.
In their favor, gain as much power.
And so
as possible.
Bernie Sanders is kind of an anomaly in that case, right? So, but again, back onto the whole coronavirus political maneuvering thing.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like it's being used as a way of shunning, or not shunning, but saying, Donald Trump doesn't care about the American people.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't care enough to protect you guys against this massive pandemic that's going to kill everyone.
Yeah.
I feel like that's kind of been the narratives that's being pushed.
Yeah, but also, like, have you seen what he said? He's
Well, Mike Pence.
He's inept.
Well, what do you mean?
I saw this. He was talking to the press, and he said, "Well, wouldn't just a regular flu vaccine, would that do anything for the coronavirus?" And everyone's like, "No, no." Right? Everyone in the room was like, "What the fuck is this guy talking about?" So I don't know. To me, the characterization that Donald Trump is, an inept person that doesn't know much about pandemics, especially the coronavirus, is an accurate portrayal.
Yeah, but his constituents do, right? Or not constituents, but the people who are supposed to be taking care of this pandemic do, right?
Yeah, I mean, you could say that, right? That the CDC, is staffed with officials and experts on the specific issue of a pandemic, and that they're doing their best to, stop it however they can. But also, I think that we've seen evidence of the White House muzzling the CDC, right? That they have stopped press reports. They have stopped CDC officials from talking to the press about the prevalence and the spread of the coronavirus.
They haven't been muzzling.
Yeah, there was. Do you
think that they're specifically making sure that these experts cannot tell people about the coronavirus and the severity of the coronavirus?
They can't tell the
press. What do you mean by that?
2 days ago, the CDC had a scheduled press conference, right, where experts and officials from the CDC was going to talk to the press about the coronavirus. And 2 hours before, it was canceled, right? Why? I don't know. We don't know as the American public, but it seems to me that the only reason why that sort of press conference would get canceled is because of orders from above, right? And who's above the CDC? It's the White House. It's under the jurisdiction of the executive branch. So I don't know. Is it a concerted conspiracy to muzzle the CDC? I keep on saying CCP. I don't know, because conspiracies are purposefully opaque. But it seems like it is in the best interest of the White House and the administration to underreport this problem, to say that everything is fine, continue doing your regular things, right? Everything's fine. Don't look at the stock market. Everything's fine. Just close your eyes, right?
I don't think that's what they're trying to do.
Do you think that they're honestly reporting everything in a unoptimistic light? Do you think that they're reporting everything to portray that we're doing everything we can, don't worry about it, just continue doing what you're doing, right?
Well, I think what they're trying to say is that they are doing what they should be doing, right? I think that's what they're trying to tell people, right? Mm-hmm. Otherwise, what I really think they're trying to guard against is mass hysteria.
Mm-hmm. Like,
they're trying to make sure that the economic system continues as it is.
Yeah.
That people are not afraid to go to their jobs.
Mm-hmm.
That they're not afraid to talk to anyone.
Mm-hmm.
They're not afraid to go down the street and get a coffee.
Right.
Like, I feel like that's what they're trying to say, is that it isn't near as drastic as it's being made out to be,
mm-hmm.
which it isn't,
mm-hmm.
right? Because we already said 40,000 people were infected and only like 4,000 of them died.
Right. That's 10%. If 10% of America died, that's like 300,000 people.
Okay, granted.
It's a lot of people.
But what it's really affecting is the older generation, right? It's not going to be, hopefully, it's not going to be me and you gets infected and we die in 2 months.
Mm-hmm.
Like I feel like there's a real trying to display this as some mass hysteria and pandemic in the interest of making Donald Trump look bad.
Yeah.
And for the upcoming election. And so what's being pushed is that the coronavirus is the worst illness and the worst disease that's been around for a very long time, and that if it spreads to the United States, 10% of the population, we're all gonna die. And it's in their interest to do that because they want to win the election. That's what I kind of see happening.
Yeah,
and I'm not saying that the coronavirus isn't deadly, and I'm not saying it isn't bad.
Yeah,
like it's certainly bad, but is it as bad as it's being made out to be? No, I don't think so.
Yeah, no,
and it goes back to your point again about getting eyeballs and getting advertisers.
Yeah.
It's like, of course they're going to say it's really bad.
Yeah,
because that's what gets eyeballs.
Yeah,
it doesn't mean that, like, can you imagine if they're like, yeah, no, coronavirus it only kills this amount of people and it's not that bad. Like, it's only in China. Well, it's not only in China, but it's mainly affecting China and large populations and older people. And, if they said all those things, then why would they keep saying that coronavirus sucks and it's killing so many people? You know what I mean?
Yeah, but I mean, also. I think that, encouraging the American people to continue with life as is not the best way to combat it.
No, and I don't think they're doing that. Like, I'll give you an example. So I got church on Sunday this week, right? It's in Friday, Saturday, Sunday, so 2 days. And the head priest of the church, his name's Father Anthony, love him to death. He said, during the sign of peace, don't shake anyone's hands. He sent out an email to the parishioners, to the laity. Don't shake anyone's hands. And if you're going to receive the Eucharist, you can't receive it on the tongue. You need to receive it in your hand. Like, that's very minor. But, like, he's worried about it. People are trying. I mean, like, it's a logical step.
Yeah.
Don't shake people's hands at church.
Right. And, it's a step in the right direction, right? But wouldn't a more effective step be, let's not get several hundred people all together in a room breathing the same air, right?
We're not going to cancel church.
Of course not. You can't cancel church.
Can't cancel church. You got to keep the Sabbath holy.
Yeah. But I mean, I think that,
No,
I don't know. I feel like we
agree.
Yeah, we agree.
We agree.
Relatively.
Yeah, we just disagree about the political.
Like, yeah. But I mean, I do think that, we do need to consider it as a serious threat. Right. Even though only 10% of the people die, right? 10% is a significant amount of people, right? And by, telling the American people that they shouldn't worry, that they should continue with life as is, only encourages the spread of the virus. And it's hit Santa Clara County, where I used to live, incredibly hard. Right. That's the heart of the Silicon Valley, and now there's over 700 reported cases in that area, right? People in self-quarantine, right? Not officially documented cases, because it's incredibly expensive to get tested and get treated for the coronavirus, right?
And I see that. Like, I feel like we're kind of
we're talking in circles.
Talking in circles here, but I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like we covered coronavirus enough.
Yeah.
What do you want to talk about next?
You want to talk about postmodernism?
Yeah, we can talk about that.
Yeah. All right. So before we get into this, let's give a disclaimer.
We don't know anything.
We don't know anything about postmodernism, and we've not read
except like the bullet points.
Yeah, exactly. Wikipedia. We've not read Foucault. We've not read Derrida
at all.
None of that stuff. But we're gonna talk about our own interpretations of what we think postmodernism means. Right.
I don't think it's good.
And I think it is. Right. So that's what we're talking about. If you have read postmodern theory, you're going to get real upset, and you're going to get real, bogged down by us
like,
making
what are these
misinterpretations.
What are these plebeian folk
yeah,
talking
exactly.
All right. So
give me your pitch. Why is it bad? Why shouldn't we be skeptical about the established?
I think we should be skeptical of postmodernism, because what it promotes is this idea that all classes and all struggles are not of competency but of power. Right? And so it sees the hierarchy system as not being built on competency, but instead being a power struggle between people. Right? And so it says that anyone who has more than me got it by power, but they had more power at a certain time, and so they ended up stealing and doing bad things with that power. So I don't think that's a very good way of looking at things, because if you always look at it as power struggles, what ends up happening is you start characterizing people based on their struggle of power, right? Because when you have a group of people and you say, let's say, we'll take the 1%, for instance. These people, the 1%, the only reason why they have this money is because they took the upper hand, that they somehow stole power away from me, right? And I don't think it's a very good way of looking at it, because when you believe that, then it advocates as a logical step to steal that power away from them, because they didn't earn their power.
Yeah.
They stole it from me. So I should unite all these low people and just steal it away from them.
Hell yeah.
And I don't think that's very good.
Why not?
I don't think it's very good, because it openly advocates for murder.
Oh. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. To me, sometimes you have to make,
And let me add this. As
make
well.
absolute statements, right? Obviously every situation has nuance, right? And there are those in power that are competent, and those in power that are smart, right? But ultimately, I think that it's kind of enlightening to look at the world through the lens of power struggle, right? Because it in one way it does simplify things, right? Which is not advantageous in a lot of ways, because it promotes
a unidimensional way of thinking.
Yeah. And that's not the way the world works. It's not unidimensional. It's multidimensional, right? But by ignoring power struggles and purely looking at competency, really ignores a lot of the class warfare that goes on in our society, right? And before we get into it, that's not really my interpretation of postmodernism, right? It seems to me that it's all about being skeptical about the established supposed morals of a society, and being rigorous in questioning all of the established modes of thought and things that are supposed to be assumptions, right? We should question those assumptions. Basically an extension of the Socratic method, that in order to reach the truth, we need to question and pick apart what is already established, right? But let's go.
Wait, but that's contradicting itself, right? Because
what do you mean?
Because you're saying that it's good to view the world through a lens of power struggle, right?
Yeah.
But then you said as well that I believe in a Socratic way of thinking, where we take multiple points and we meet the same answer. So it's kind of a contradicting statement.
Oh no,
to
it
say
is.
that we believe in power struggles.
Yeah.
But we also should consider multiple perspectives.
Yeah.
Because the postmodern thought is that everything is power struggles. That there is nothing else.
I don't think that's true. I think that ultimately, we'll talk about power struggles, right? But I think that to say postmodernism can be boiled down to looking at everything through power struggles is really a disservice to the French postmodernists like Derrida and Foucault, right? I think,
but
that
we can say that the modern interpretation of it is that.
I won't make a broad absolute statement like that, right? Which I know I'm contradicting myself, right? I'm talking about absolute statements in one case and not in others, right?
Sure.
But let's put aside what postmodernism really is and just talk about power struggles, right? In my perspective, I think that my lens of the world is all about power struggle. I think that when one group of power has power over another, they will inevitably use that power to benefit themselves, right? And that is the root cause of so many of the problems that we see in modern society, is that certain groups of people, primarily the wealthy, have all of the power. Now, obviously not all of the power. I'm speaking in absolute terms here. But yeah, of course, when they have all that power, they're going to make decisions that benefit themselves. And I don't know, in my reading and studying of American history and looking at the current American government, it does seem like those who have power make decisions that benefit themselves, right? And I think that it's an accurate summation of what goes on, you know? And obviously we're speaking in absolute terms here. Everything is nuanced. Nothing is unidimensional like that. But I think that by, making that point that everything is nuanced and everything is multidimensional, you ignore the glaring issue of one group has power and one doesn't. And the group that has power uses that power to benefit themselves. I think that is a glaring, foundation of American society, and that by, picking it apart with, nuance and, saying, oh, it's not all like that. Sometimes they deserve that power, right? It ignores the glaring reality of class struggle and class warfare that is prevalent in every aspect of American society.
So, okay, let me add this.
Mm-hmm.
My problem isn't necessarily with the so-called oppressors as it is with the oppressed, right? Because postmodernism claims that there are oppressors and there are the oppressed, right? And who is to say what group of people is oppressed? Because that's where the problem really lies. Because if you don't have the oppressed, then there are no there. Then everyone is an oppressor, right? And so we saw this happening in the true communist societies like Stalin's Russia, right?
Not true communism, by the way, but continue.
Okay, well, that'll be another topic.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
But what ended up happening is the oppressed, the list of people who were oppressed just kept growing and growing and growing and growing.
Yeah.
And so, which is why the people who actively supported the Communist Party in Stalin's Russia ended up being killed at the hands of communism. Yeah.
No, I mean,
because
elaborate a little bit.
Sure.
Because even in that situation, there are still oppressors and oppressed. Right?
Yeah, but the problem is, who's to say who's oppressed and who's the oppressor, right? Because the list just keeps growing. Like for instance, we'll take the LGBTQ whatever community, right? The list just keeps growing. It's like, LGBTQ plus whatever.
Yeah.
It just keeps growing and growing.
Yeah.
The list just keeps going and going.
Right.
And so I'm wary of saying that there's oppressors and oppressed in the world because the list of the people oppressed keeps growing and keeps growing and keeps growing. Right. And what ends up happening is anyone who has more than the worst oppressed person, we could consider him like the worst. Everyone hates him. He's just been under tyranny his entire life. That person ends up becoming the most oppressed person. If you're not him, if you're not that person, then everyone else above you is oppressors. And so when you have mode of thought, then there's no strict judgment saying that there's no clear defined line that everyone who is above this line of oppression is now the oppressor, right? Because that's what happened in communist Russia with the kulaks, right? The kulaks were not by any means rich people, right? They were farmers who had one cow and maybe a little bit of land, right? And what ended up happening is
the kulaks were landlords that had other people work their land for
them,
but
they
didn't
weren't rich.
Have to work.
They were not rich.
Comparatively to the other peasants, they were much wealthier.
No, not necessarily. They weren't.
All right, let's not get into the communism, right? Let's not get into the kulaks, right? Okay, but
again, let me finish.
Go ahead.
It's a very big deal to say that anyone who has more than me is an oppressor of me. Because if you say that, then there are thousands and thousands of categories that you can put people in, right? You could say he's white and he's tall. I'm short and I'm fat, right? He's an oppressor of me.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so there's no clear defined categories of oppressor and oppressed people. And so when you have that, then who's to say that they're not oppressed?
Yeah.
Do you get what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, no, I get what you're trying to say. That by looking at the world through the lens of oppressor and oppressee, you can make broad oversimplifications, and it can justify, actions that are not desirable for society as a whole, right? But I think that ultimately,
not just not desirable, but instantly murderous.
Yeah, but I think that that's not the reasonable end of that perspective, right? I think that we can decide as a majority that people like Mike Bloomberg and Jeff Bezos are ultimately in the oppressor class, right? That and it is a grayscale. It's never black and white, right? There's not a clear group of oppressors and a clear group of people that are oppressed, right? But ultimately, you can look at the far ends of that scale, right? That is pretty much white and pretty much black. And you can make that claim that one is an oppressor and one is an oppressed.
Well,
right?
if something is true, it has to be true for all of the entirety of the category.
Yeah.
Right? For the extremes and for the middle.
Yeah.
And so to say that it only works at the extremes, I think is not true because...
Well, no, because there's nuance, right? You know, a doctor that makes, you know, $300,000 a year is certainly more wealthy than a cashier that makes $30,000 a year.
And so that
right?
doctor is somehow oppressing the cashier.
But also that doctor is a laborer, and he is under the foot of the capitalist. Whatever company he works for is ultimately taking his labor and using it for their own purposes, right? So there is a gray area in there, right? But I think that when you look at the far ends of the spectrum, you can make assumptions that, you know, this hardworking single mother of 3 people who never had the money to get a higher education and you know, has been stuck working minimum wage jobs her entire life, you can ultimately call her oppressed. Now, obviously, we need to be rigorous and intellectually rigorous, right? Really look at each individual situation, right? But it's impossible, right? We cannot sit down and identify every single person in America and place them into one category, right?
Yeah, whether or not they're oppressor or oppressed.
Yeah, but in order to overturn a social order that does have oppressors and does have people that are oppressed, you need to make broad assumptions, right? And you know, obviously it's not intellectually rigorous, right? And it's, you know, not quite as Socratic as we would like, right? But we don't have time and we don't have the ability to categorize every single person in America, right? But can we agree that there are some people that are oppressed and there are some people that do oppressing? Can we agree on that?
Well, I don't want to use oppressed, but I could say are less fortunate.
Okay, let's come up with a hypothetical.
Well, let me speak to your point that you made about that woman who doesn't have the resources to go to school and is a single mother.
Yeah.
All right. We could say that she is somehow she is, I don't want to say oppressed, but just less fortunate than the person who has a lot of money. That's apparent, right? What I really want to guard against, and what you even spoke on, was that this is a very gray area. There's not clear defined oppressed and oppressed lines. Oppressed and oppressor lines. And so what I see happening, which is what I spoke about with the LGBTQ community or whatever, the list just keeps on growing because, you know, one person says, oh, I'm oppressed. Okay, we'll add you to the list. Oh, well, I'm also oppressed. Well, I'll add you to the list too. And then it ends up becoming this long list of people who are just oppressed.
Yeah.
Right?
Well,
and what happens as a product of that is all those people who are in that category of oppression cannot look at the world through the idea through the lens that hierarchies are built on competency. That the reason why people make more money is because they're smarter, better looking.
Yeah.
You know, what all the reasons.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or maybe that they have more money because they were handed more money.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, that doesn't seem like they're very competent, right? But look, I really want to stay away from that idea because you look at the world as tyrannical plumbers, right? Because if you say that the person who has, you know, your Jeff Bezos and your, billionaires, right? Bill Gates, that they're not competent, right? And a plumber who is what we would say competent in plumbing, that he makes $40,000 a year. Well, he's also part of this tyranny, right? Because he makes more money than I do, right? Are you really going to say that the plumber who makes more money than I do is oppressing me?
No, that's not the claim that I'm making.
No, I know, but it's a logical step if you believe the idea that to view the world through a lens of power struggles is a good idea, because it logically follows that if you say that this power struggle lens will somehow support those at the bottom who are oppressed, then it has to be true for anyone who has more money than I do. Yeah, it has to.
I don't, because the thing is, you're making an assumption that the category of the oppressed people can be expanded without evidence, right? That simply because someone says that they are oppressed, they can get added to, like you said, the long list of people. I think that that's not what happens, right? People that are part of a category that are oppressed have to bring forth their issues and tell their stories, and then the majority can decide, yes, these people are oppressed and they need help.
Okay, so let's assume that those people at the top who get to determine that.
It's not the people at the top. It's a majority of society.
Okay, then
right?
Then how does the majority of society actually determine whether a person's oppressed or not?
By listening to their stories.
Okay, then who determines whether or not their story is an actually oppressed group?
It's not one person, Gabe.
Okay, so let's say
so gay people, for example, right? Gay people in the 20s were, can we say oppressed?
I can say mistreated.
Mistreated, right? They were not allowed to marry who they love. They were attacked. They were, and still in a lot of places, right? But in the 20s, they were attacked. They violence. Mobs would go to gay bars and burn them down, right? I feel like that's clear example of oppression, right? That because of who you love, you are less than me, right? That was the mindset in the 20s, right? And then through the process of gay people rising up, protesting, telling their stories, making the public aware of their struggle, we've gotten to where we are today, where most of the country thinks that gay people should be treated equally and should be, not oppressed anymore, right? And it's a long process, and people struggle and people die through that process, right? Gay rights protesters, received threats and harassment by homophobes that didn't want them to, break out of that box of oppression, right? But it's a long, hard process to gain the recognition of the majority, and it took until 2008 or 9 for gay marriage to be legalized federally, right? So it's a long, hard process to win over the opinion of the majority, right? But ultimately, that's the process that oppressed people go through to gain that support.
Yeah, and
right?
I'm not saying that there aren't people who are oppressed, because there certainly is people who
right.
are oppressed. What I'm really claiming is that to only view the world through this lens of power struggles is not desirable, because
and I don't think anyone does.
There certainly are people who do.
No, and a lot of people use that lens in that justification to further their own personal interests.
You know
right?
why? It's because it's a very simplistic way of viewing the world.
Yeah, it is. But I think
it's hard to say that there's reasons why people have more money than I do. There's reasons why people are taller and better looking than I am. There's reasons why people have more sexual activity than I do.
Yeah. But I think that there are explanations for all those things, right? And ultimately, I think that looking at it purely through the lens of competency is also a simplification, right? Saying that those in power are there simply because they're competent is also a gross simplification of the multidimensional problem that there is, right?
It would depend if it was accurate or not.
Right. Do you think it's accurate?
I think it's accurate. Yeah.
Right. So everybody that has billions of dollars got there purely on their own labor and their own hard work.
I'm not saying that. I'm saying that the reason why they have billions of dollars is because they provided something that was useful to a certain market. Okay, and I'm not saying the people who inherited that wealth,
right? But they're a big part of that, right? A significant portion of the wealthy class were born into that class.
Okay, and so we could say that the person who started that class was competent.
Well, nobody started the upper class. It's existed.
Not class. We could say that the person
beginning.
who made that money was competent.
Yeah.
Okay, he was competent in providing something useful to a group of people.
Right.
Okay,
At some
level. We could
level.
also say that people who make more money. So we could say doctors are more competent than plumbers, in their field of study. We could say that plumbers are more competent in changing pipes, and doctors are more competent in providing healthcare.
Right. But it's really a question of what society values. Right.
Yes, and you're exactly right. And the market determines the value of the products or the services.
Yeah.
Right. So it isn't up to the people to determine the value of certain things. It's up to the marketplace to determine the value of certain things.
Yeah.
And so to say that a person is more competent because first off, competency depends on context. This is what Malcolm Gladwell said in a book called Blink. Right? He said competency is you are only competent based on the context of your competency. So plumbers are more competent in changing pipes, and doctors are more competent, and So when you look at that, right, you can say, well, the competency of the plumber isn't valued as much as the competency of a doctor. Why is that? Well, it's because of the marketplace. And so if you say that because a person is competent in left-hand puppeteering, right, which doesn't pay much at all, right? Left-hand puppeteering. That's kind of funny. When a person is competent in left-hand puppeteering, it doesn't pay well. Oh, well, he's somehow oppressed by the system itself, right? Because what ends up happening is these people make these generalizations by saying, since my competency in a certain field isn't valued, therefore the whole system is corrupt. Therefore, it's just a power struggle between people who are more competent in a certain field, right?
Yeah.
Like I don't see that as good.
Yeah, and I'm not necessarily arguing for that. That any person that has less than should immediately strike out against those that have more. But I think that when you're talking about the hierarchy of wealth, right, which is ultimately what we're talking about, right? I think that a key component of having an extreme amount of wealth, in addition to competency, is having familial wealth, right? I think that if you look across the spectrum of the 1% in America right now, almost all of them, I would try to say 90% of them, were born into the upper class, right? So competency is one part of them getting to that position, right? But a significant part is that should be considered is how much money and how much resources they were given to begin with, right? And I think that out there in America there are millions and millions of competent entrepreneurs, right, that have good ideas for niches in the marketplace, and if they had the resources to utilize and bring those ideas to the market, they would compete on a level playing field with all of the entrepreneurs that started off with millions of dollars. They would compete equally, if not better, right?
Yeah, but let's get back to postmodernism, right?
Well, let me finish it,
okay.
right? And ultimately, I think that by giving the credit for a product simply to the founder of a company is a gross oversimplification of the whole issue, right? John Walton didn't create Walmart, right? He had the spark of the idea. He put in entrepreneurial labor that brought the company to where it is today. But there were millions of workers that also contributed to that institution. And without them, Walmart would not be where it is today, right? So to say that John Walton is the sole founder of Walmart and therefore he deserves all the wealth that is created by Walmart as an enterprise is not true, right? John Walton didn't do everything, right? Now, his labor might have been more valuable and more, it might have been necessary for the creation of Walmart as it is today.
We don't say might, because it was, right? Because now he has billions of dollars, right?
Yeah, it was, right? But I think that, it's a gross oversimplification to say that those at the top of a company deserve all the wealth created by that company, because ultimately they were put in that position because of a difference in the skill of their labor, because they were doing entrepreneurial labor instead of menial labor, right? And in a lot of ways, menial labor is required. In fact, in every way, menial labor is required for the success of entrepreneurial labor.
Certainly
right?
is.
So to discredit, the laborers who built these fortunes for these billionaires, is to take the side of the oppressor.
Okay.
Sorry,
I feel like
that last point I was just
teasing,
poking you a little bit, right?
I see that.
But do you see what I mean, right? That
I do.
These people, yes, they were competent in the role of entrepreneur, right? But them doing that labor as an entrepreneur required the labor of many others who were not rewarded fully for the value of their labor.
Yeah, I see that.
Right,
I see that. Well, and again, it really goes back to, well, who determines the value of the labor? The marketplace.
The market, yeah.
And so, if a person chooses to take a job that pays less, that's their problem, right? Because the market determines how they value how they get paid, right? Like I said earlier, a person with left-hand puppeteering, right? If a person chooses to be the person who's at who's the cashier at at a Walmart where they just push buttons. And I'm not saying it's a hard job because they got to be on their feet all day.
Yeah.
You know, they took that position.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that they didn't have the adequate resources to rise to the top. I'm saying they took that position, and so they're getting paid according to what they agreed to be paid, right?
Yeah, but that's looking at it from an individual perspective, right? Looking at individual workers and the choices they made to get to the place where they are now, right? But we both agree that there is a massive class in this country that is required to do menial, low-paid labor in order for our economic system to function, right? Even if Sally at Walmart, chooses to put her career aside and, go get a master's degree in finance and, get a job as a banker, right? She might get paid more, but ultimately that job of a Walmart cashier still needs to be filled, right? And there's a significant class of people that don't have the choice to move up because,
Yes, they do.
Well, no, everybody goes out and gets a good degree, right? And they're all, they all work really hard and they, do whatever it takes to move up in the societal ladder. Ultimately, there are jobs at the bottom that still need to be filled, right? So if everybody, does what they're quote unquote supposed to do, right? And, increase the skill of their labor, get education, get a degree, get all the qualifications needed for them to move up the economic, wealth ladder, there are still people at the bottom, there are still spots at that bottom of the ladder that need to be filled.
Well, I don't know if that's necessarily true.
Really?
Yeah, because the assumption is if all these people got better paying jobs, and there would still need to be jobs that need to be filled. But what you're assuming is that the jobs that are being valued higher by the marketplace won't create new jobs that will also be of better quality to the people who need to fill those positions. Do you get what I'm trying to say?
No,
so the assumption, what you're assuming is that there won't be innovation from the people who are taking these higher paying jobs that are valued by the market more. Yeah. There won't be innovation. And the jobs that are now the lowest jobs, right, won't be higher paying. Do you get what I'm trying to say?
Yeah. I mean,
because I don't think it's ever been tested, right?
Right, where everybody goes out and gets a degree.
Gets a degree. And what happens to those lower paying jobs? Well, we don't know because it's never been tested. But let's not say. Do you get what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, but I think it kind of has because right now, millennials got degrees at a higher rate, right? They all went and got an education, right? And they still found that there weren't enough jobs for them to fill.
Which is why those jobs are valued,
right?
The ones that pay more is because there aren't enough of those jobs to go around.
Yeah, exactly. So there's not enough jobs for them. There's not enough roles for extremely educated people to fill.
Yeah, my earlier point was wrong.
So not everybody can just magically flip a switch and take up that role.
No,
because
that's
there's just not enough roles for them to fill.
Yeah, my earlier point was wrong.
Right. So ultimately there are going to be people at the bottom of the ladder, right? Okay. No matter how we can do a lot of innovation and automation, right? And those jobs can become more productive, but ultimately there are people that are going to have to fill those the lower paying jobs. And in order for people at the top to build their wealth, right, ultimately they have to rely on those people at the bottom of the wealth hierarchy to do that menial labor that society values as less than, right?
But again, I don't think you can attribute the low paying jobs to the people who have more money, because it isn't them to determine what price the market values their labor. It's up to the market itself.
Yeah.
Do you get what I'm trying to say? Like, I don't think that you can say, since these Walmart employees are getting paid $12 an hour in California, that's minimum, that somehow the problem of these big billionaires. And I'm not saying the billionaires couldn't pay them more money. But I'm saying that the value of their labor has been valued at this amount.
Right.
And so it's not, they don't determine the value of of the labor. The market does.
Right.
Like, just think about tomorrow. Let's say tomorrow, all businesses are required to pay their employees $15 an hour. Then the billionaires must make that sacrifice and say, okay, now you're all getting paid $15 an hour.
Yeah.
Right. So that could be put into law. Right.
Yeah.
But left to work itself out. Let's say automation does happen, and now one person can do the work of 10 people, and that one person that was doing that job now gets to be paid $10 more because now they have to.
That won't happen.
Well,
I think because the thing is, yes, the market is involved, right? The market ultimately does determine what people are paid, right? But there are a broad range of these jobs that require no qualifications. They require very little skill, and basically anybody can be put into that job and do it effectively, right? Something like a cashier or a deli clerk, right? Basically most people can do that job, right? And ultimately all of the, a market is a conglomeration of the people. The labor market is the conglomeration of companies that pay laborers for their labor, right? And all of those companies have a written-in incentive. It's part of the profit-seeking structure to pay people as little as they possibly can, right? And still have those people fill that job, right? So when you extrapolate that across the entire market and see that all these companies that hire menial laborers to do low-skilled labor are paying those laborers as little as they can, the market becomes automatically pushed down. Right, so the price of labor is going to be artificially reduced because all of these companies have an incentive to pay them as little as they can. Even if the labor is increasing in skill and increasing in productivity, they're going to pay them as little as possible.
And how does the labor actually get more money from the position?
Right, because
but by having unions
and
by having
labor
democratic.
laws.
Well, I think we're kind of straying away from our point here.
Yeah,
right?
we're talking in tunnels and circles.
Yeah,
and,
but. Yeah, no, and I'm in agreement with that. Like, I feel like the worker could demand better pay. And should.
Yeah, because the productivity has increased.
But the
at a
wages,
steady rate, but the wages have stagnated.
Okay.
Because our laws have allowed those companies to pay those laborers as little as possible.
Yeah, well,
right?
that's what a business is, right? The only reason a business exists is to make money. And so they're going to cut every cost that they can and pay their workers the least amount of money they can while still filling those positions.
Yeah.
And, like, I feel like that we're arguing a different point. Let's just get back onto postmodernism because I feel like we're going into like the democratic or the non-democratic labor in America.
Yeah.
But let's go back to postmodernism. So, do you see my point about how the categories that determine whether or not a person's oppressed?
No, I definitely see your point,
and I don't think it's good because then it gets extrapolated into all people are somehow oppressed in some way, right? Because then I could say, well, I'm short, and therefore all tall people are oppressing me. Like the category will just continually.
I think that's a misrepresentation. Just that specific example, but I see your point.
You see what I'm trying to say?
I see your point, right? But I think that
because who's to determine who's oppressed and who's the oppressor?
The majority, right?
But okay, the problem with that is
let me make a point, right? Let me make a point. So okay, can we agree that there are groups of people that are oppressors and are oppressed, right? I'm not going to say which ones, right? But there are systems where the institutions that we have benefit one group and hurt the other, right?
I want to stay away from saying oppressed and oppressor.
Okay.
I want to say
so
more fortunate and less fortunate.
Right, but there is a reason why it's like that, right? There's a reason why those that are more fortunate are more fortunate, and it's not purely based on competency. Because I guarantee you that the hardest working person in the world is not wealthy, right? The person that
how would you measure that?
The most they work, right? I can almost guarantee, right, that the hardest working person is a single mother somewhere in the world that works her ass off to support her children in their lives, right? Working 16-hour days, doing back-breaking work.
Stay away from the pathos.
Carrying rocks every day, right? Just so her children can go to school. That person, she's suffering. She is Sisyphus, all right?
She's carrying that boulder up the mountain.
Yeah, I think that the hardest person, the hardest working person in the world is probably not that wealthy, right?
Dude, here's
okay. No,
I want to
let's not get into that point, right?
Let's stay away from the emotion. Let's just talk about this logically.
Yeah, okay. Logic, logos.
Because I feel like every time you bring up a point, you're like, these are hardworking mothers carrying rocks up these mountains. I'm like, how am I supposed to argue with that? You know,
that's how you make a good argument, though. You gotta throw some ethos in there, some pathos.
But I mean,
okay.
Anyways,
All right.
Moving on.
But yeah, so can we?
It's real bad, by the way.
All right,
but
you want to just pause it?
no, let's not pause it. I'm gonna just talk.
No. We'll pause it. I can't do this again, with you and I here, All
right, we'll be back in like.
Yeah, you won't know. Where's the mouse? Put it at the end. Okay, yeah, we're back. Yeah, it's recording. We're good. Yeah. All right. Little break, little intermission.
We had to hit the restrooms.
Yeah, pee. All right. So I think your point about extrapolating the categories of oppressor and oppressee can be dangerous, right? And that people have the incentive to see themselves as oppressed because it's easy to blame one's own problems on others, right? And it's in a way dangerous to do that, right? But ultimately, if we want to dismantle unjust hierarchies, right, that are there in place not because of competency, but because society simply accepts them, right? Like, the hierarchy between black people and white people. That was a hierarchy that was, established since the beginning of this country. And before the Emancipation Proclamation, it was widely accepted that white people are above black people, right? And in order to dismantle that hierarchy, that unjust hierarchy, people first needed to recognize that there was a hierarchy and that it was unjust.
Exactly. That is a very good point.
Right.
Because I feel like this
is
what...
in order to, we can agree on that there are categories of people that are oppressed and are oppressors, right? I know you don't want to use that word, right? Those words, but there are unjust hierarchies that exist in our society.
There are corrupt hierarchies. That's what, yeah.
Right, but it's not warranted, those hierarchies, right? They
they're
are
corrupt,
there.
yeah.
They are there, and they don't need to be there. And because they are there, people hurt, people suffer.
Yeah,
right?
definitely. Well, I mean, that's self-evident.
Right.
Well, it should be self-evident.
It should be self-evident.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah, but
so the first step in tackling and dismantling those hierarchies is recognizing them, naming them, and taking active steps to dismantle them. Right. Legislative steps in direct action, and eventually, and a lot of those hierarchies still remain to this day. Black people still suffer today because of white supremacy in this country and our institutions. Gay people still face discrimination in the workplace, in society as a whole. We have not finished these battles. We're not done tackling unjust hierarchies. But the first step in tackling them is recognizing them, and using the oppressor-oppressee narrative is a easy way for the majority of people to recognize them and begin the process of dismantling them.
Yeah, okay. It's a good point.
Yeah.
It's a good point.
And in order for, and we can agree that there are some hierarchies that aren't unjust, right? And some people will use that narrative to further their own personal interests when, the majority does not agree with them necessarily. And I'm speaking in vague terms because I don't want to talk about any specific group. But ultimately, in order to tackle those unjust hierarchies or just hierarchies, you need the consent of the majority, right? And I think that ultimately the majority will look at things rigorously, right? Not as rigorously as we might like it, right? But ultimately, when it comes down to it, those hierarchies that are not unjust, the majority will not support dismantling them, and those that are unjust, if given the right, correct information, the majority will support tackling them.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah. Okay. I think I see your perspective.
Yeah.
I think where it kind of goes wrong
mm-hmm.
is when you say that there are corrupt hierarchies, that there are people that, like, the oppression between the white people oppressing the slaves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right.
Unjust. We can't.
Very unjust.
Horrible.
I don't
right?
agree.
Brutal.
I
Violent, and it still has effects today, right?
Yeah. Well,
ultimately,
I mean, definitely. Yep.
It is not a problem that we have overcome. That is an unjust hierarchy that still exists in America today, and we need to continue to make steps to try to tackle it.
Definitely. See, I think the problem lies when you say, well, this was blatantly unjust.
Mm-hmm.
This was, black people being oppressed by white people. Like, that is blatantly unjust. Human's a human. we should respect them.
Yeah.
Right? It's blatantly unjust.
No one should be the property of another person.
Exactly.
Right?
But when you extrapolate that to people with money and people without money, I don't think it holds weight. Because we can point to the reason why black people were oppressed from white people. It's because white people took the upper hand. We could say, hey, we use these people as a source of labor, right? And that was unjust. But what do you say about people who have the 1% and the people who have nothing?
Yeah.
What do you point to? What do you point to? Do you say it was they took the upper hand, or did they just seize an opportunity?
I think
because the market is what determines the value of something. And could you say, well, the market itself is corrupt, so we should just get rid of the market?
No, I don't. And I think that, before we were talking about the market for labor, right? That certain labor is more skilled and more valued by the market than other labor, right? The labor of a cashier is generally less valued than the labor of a investment banker, right? Because it takes more skill and more education to become an investment banker than a cashier, right? But I think that an important part in the hierarchy of wealth is the fact that wealth simply creates more wealth without any labor input, right? Once again, like I said, I got $10,000 when I was born, put into a savings account, and now it's $17,000. That money would be $17,000 regardless of how dumb I am, right? Regardless of how valuable my labor is. Purely because it is money, it created more money.
So what should we do? Should we just wipe out the whole system itself?
Yeah.
The
system of allowing wealth to create more wealth.
So we become a poor country if that happens.
Not necessarily.
Yes, we do. Because the reason why there's wealth in America is because wealth creates more wealth.
Right.
Right. And so I
think personal wealth, right? When a person has an extreme amount of wealth, they can use that wealth to create more wealth, regardless of their own skill or their competency, right?
So you just want to wipe that away.
Extrapolates the divide between those that have and those that have not, right? And I think that all wealth should be derived from labor, and it should be determined by the skill of your labor as determined by the market, right?
But that's a contradicting statement because the market itself, This really stretches me, right? Because it's very complex. But to say that we should wipe out the system where wealth creates more wealth is terrible. Because if you say that,
well, you want me to elaborate, right?
Well, let me just say this.
Go ahead.
So when you say that we should wipe out the system where wealth makes more wealth, and that all money should be given by the labor that you work. Well, that is contradictory to how money is already made in America through the market system, where your money, the money that you make, is valued purely based on the market. It's not determined by, well, I shouldn't say it isn't, not purely. The reason why you work a high-paying job is because it's been valued as high-paying, right? And the way that it's valued is by how skilled your work is, and ultimately the market determines how much you make, right?
Yeah.
Now, if you say that that people who have money shouldn't have the ability to use their money that they already have to make more money, then what you end up doing is you wipe away the entire economic system of America.
Yeah.
Which is the wealthiest country in the world.
Yeah.
Okay.
For a wealthy few, we still have extreme rates of poverty. We are among developed nations. The working people of this country suffer incredibly compared to others, right? Okay. I'm not advocating for taking all money and putting it under mattresses, right? And not allowing it to be put back into the economy. I think that ultimately, in order to spur economic growth, startups and established companies need an input of wealth in order to fund further projects, right? And I think that we can do that through loans, right? With interest. Right, and that's a fundamental function of our economy. That if you wipe that out, you stunt economic growth, right? Which ultimately does benefit people in America, right? But I think that allowing all of the benefit from that economic growth allowing it to go to those that already have wealth further extrapolates the income divide that we have in this country. And that income divide is the root cause for a lot of the problems that we see in American government, we see in American society, and in our institutions as a whole.
Yeah,
right?
Well, I feel like what we're touching on is what is politics, right? Because politics, in my mind, is this idea that the right want to keep the hierarchy, to keep the things that have already been established. And they say the hierarchy needs to stay in place, whether that be a hierarchy of money, hierarchy of status, whatever it is. That hierarchy needs to stay in place, right? And then, but all hierarchies tend towards corruption. All hierarchies tend towards corruption, right? So when a hierarchy becomes corrupt, that's when the left come in and say, hey, this hierarchy is corrupt in this way, right? Whatever it may be. And so the left says, we need to change this, that, and the other thing, and then the hierarchy will be okay. And on the extremes of it, you have the abolition of hierarchies, abolish all hierarchies. And then on the far right of it, you have all hierarchies are good all the time, and nothing's wrong with them, right? So this is really the balance of politics right here that we're talking about.
Yeah.
And I kind of want to get off the topic because I want to keep going back to the oppressor-oppressed narrative of the postmodernists, because I feel like we just keep circling back into what this looks like in America.
Yeah.
You get what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, I do get what you're trying to say, but yeah, I mean, I'm kind of reiterating myself at this point, but I think that a system that allowed those who were born into wealth to maintain that wealth without contributing to society, personally, right? Obviously, that money does contribute to society, and there are ways to allow it to continue to contribute to society, right? But I think that allowing that money to grow exponentially without regard for where that money is coming from, who's laboring for that money, is a system that has led to the extreme wealth inequality that we see in America today. And ultimately, I believe that wealth inequality is unjust. It is unmoral, right? To allow people to die from a lack of insulin while others can buy as many yachts as they want and, damage millions of dollars worth of art with champagne corks, right? That ultimately is a problem to me.
Yeah,
right?
I think it sucks too.
And I need
I'm not arguing for that.
Right. But in my mind, I need to find some sort of alternate system that dismantles that problem without hurting the root cause of American economic growth. So I think that ultimately we should still be able to put our money in a bank account, and that money will be distributed to institutions that need that money to grow economically, right? That is a fundamental core part of the American economy that is required for growth.
Yeah.
Right? But I think that we currently have a system that allows that money to purely go back to the individuals that already have so much money, right? And it further extrapolates this massive economic inequality that we have. And those at the top since the Reagan era, the wealthy in this country have gained over $6 trillion worth of wealth, right? Now, have they done $6 trillion worth of work? No.
Well, they've provided $6 trillion worth of things to the marketplace.
They themselves, they labored for $6 trillion.
Their companies have.
Right. And
which they
who
established.
makes up those companies?
Well, the workers make up the companies, but the company wouldn't exist if it wasn't for the sole proprietor in the first place.
Right. And I think that the sole proprietor should be rewarded. Entrepreneurial labor is extremely valuable, and it is, a core keystone of economic growth in the first place. But justifying saying that because you founded this company, you deserve all of the wealth that is created by this company ever for the rest of eternity, and your grandchildren deserve all the wealth that is created by that company. It furthers the class divide, right? And that divide is hurtful. It makes people suffer, and it is not utilitarian, right? When a person has $1 billion and they have more money than they could ever spend in a lifetime, right? While others struggle to put food on the table for their children, that is unjust, it is immoral, and I need to come up with some sort of way to remedy that. I cannot sit idly by and allow that to continue because it is unjust.
Back onto emotion.
Yeah, I mean, it makes me mad, bro.
No,
it makes me so
makes
pissed. I have coworkers at Sprouts, bro. They're single mothers. They have 2 kids,
sucks.
and they have to work 40 hours a week to support those children, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, it blows my mind like how they are able to send those kids to school and be mothers at the same time as working 40 hours a week. I mean, to me, it seems impossible. While at the same time, there are people that are the grandchildren of wealthy entrepreneurs, the Rockefellers and the Carnegies of this world, that they are able to live a life of carefree excess, where they're able to do whatever they want for the rest of their life simply because they were born into a wealthy family. To me, that is unjust and that is immoral, and I have to remedy it in some way, right? And I believe that we have to dismantle the power that established inherited wealth has, right? Fuck them, I hate them,
Oh my gosh, Eric, you're making me laugh, man.
Yeah, it makes me really mad.
I know, man. I see your blood boil right now, dude.
I'm pissed off, dude. And the alternative, it's not perfect, obviously. No economic system is perfect, right? But to me, it's a better system than we have today.
Oh,
because I'm talking in circles at this point.
No,
right?
I feel like we started postmodernism.
We always come back to this topic.
And we went back to the we always come back to
because
this topic.
Ultimately it's a core question in American society. Do those at the top deserve to be at the top? And I think that in order to be at the top, you need to have incredibly skilled labor. You need to be a LeBron James, an Andy Warhol, someone who has incredibly good contributions to the rest of society. And that includes entrepreneurs that have incredibly good ideas that, fill niches in the marketplace that are currently not filled, right? But I don't think that, them being at the top, requires the mass suffering of everybody else, which it currently does.
Can I just say the problem with what I see in all this?
Yeah.
The idea that the people who labor are working harder than the people who are sitting at the top with all their money.
Yeah.
The problem that I see with all this is how in the hell do we take the money from these rich people and distribute it evenly to the population?
Not evenly.
Well, I mean,
yeah, in a utilitarian way, right?
In a utilitarian way.
Yeah.
How do we do that and still remain the wealthiest country in the world?
Yeah, I mean, I think that
you can't have both and.
Yeah, but I think that
because when you
holding the title of the wealthiest country in the world is ultimately less important than the welfare and the health of our people.
Well, I'm not saying
right. Singapore.
I'm not saying just so we have the title. Like, there's reason. Look,
Singapore,
being the
super wealthy, right? Great, good for them, right? But it's because they've become a financial center and they, become incredibly good at trading. And never mind about Singapore, right? Fuck Singapore, right? We're in America, right? But I think that holding that title benefits one class. And allowing them to continue to hold that power over the rest of us hurts the rest of us, right? And so ultimately, if we have to give that title away in order to improve the lives of everybody in America, which I don't think we do, right? Ultimately, I still think we do have the biggest economy. We have lots of consumerism. We have an incredibly big market, which ultimately giving money and allowing those that are suffering. Giving them more money to spend will ultimately increase the size of our market, right? And it will not ultimately cut down the fundamental foundation of America as an industrial powerhouse. I don't know where I'm going with this.
No,
but
I don't. Look, I don't really have the brain left to talk about this.
Bro, yeah.
I'm tired too. Like, I just don't have the brain left to really talk about this.
Yeah.
I mean, like, it really seems like people who inherit billions and billions of dollars and are just sitting on that wealth buying new yachts every single day is unfair.
Yeah.
Like, it really seems like that.
Yeah.
And the people who are single mothers who go to 3 different jobs in a day just to make sure that their kid has good clothes and enough food and a place to live, that's unfair.
Yeah.
What should be done about it?
Yeah.
Should we just steal all the money from the people at the top and give it to all the people at the bottom? I don't think it's a very viable solution.
Yeah.
Right? Because when you do that, well, first off, we talk about American corruption all the time. Like, on this podcast, we talk about how it sucks all the time.
Yeah.
And I don't think there's any, well, I shouldn't say any, but I think there are logical steps that you can do to limit the power of these people. But at the end of the day, the money's going to win out every single time. Every single time.
I mean, I think that it's that sort of belief that allows it to continue to exist. You know, if we believe that this is inevitable, our status quo cannot be changed, right? This is the way it is. Suck it up and go through it, right? Try to improve your individual life, get an education, and move up the wealth hierarchy.
That's not what I'm saying.
That's what continues this system, and ultimately, like, listen, if we don't take steps now to improve the lives of those at the bottom, it's gonna be a revolution, man. That's the path that leads to the oligarchs with their heads in guillotines in Central Park.
Look, here's something to think about.
Yeah.
More money doesn't mean you're happier. Like that's true.
Yeah.
More money doesn't mean you're happier. And
Good premise. We got it. Yeah. we agree, right?
More money doesn't mean you're happier. And so the middle class is growing in America.
It's not.
What do you mean?
It's shrinking.
Okay.
Those at the top are moving up, and those in the rest of the middle class are moving into the lower class.
But how can that be if unemployment is well? Okay. Well, what characterizes the lower class?
Lower class is if you can't pay for the necessities that it takes to live your life, right? And healthcare, one big thing, right? I feel like that's a big keystone in any industrial society is, a system that allows people to live, right? And as healthcare gets increasingly expensive, as it has, right? Healthcare has increased in price almost tenfold over the last 50 years, right? And the amount that laborers are paid for their wages, and I'm just talking about cashiers. I'm talking about everybody that labors for their wealth, right? Even if it's high skilled labor, has stagnated, right? So that pushes.
Well, okay, but
people.
We talked about this earlier, right? About the whole. Hey, you're fired up.
I know, dude. It pisses me off, bro.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah.
We talked about this earlier that the wages doesn't accurately reflect the materials that people have, right? Because the materials, the cost per materials has gone down, but
let's talk about that again. Let's talk about that again.
Okay.
Right?
Dude, we talked about postmodernism for like 5 minutes.
No,
Come
it's
on.
okay. We talked about it for a minute. All right.
Okay, whatever.
I don't know. I think that ultimately the price of consumer goods increases with inflation. Right?
Yeah, but inflation has stayed. The United States dollar is suffering from severe inflation.
Right, but the price of things does increase steadily. Can we agree on that? Just give Hitler.
The price of things does increase steadily over a very long period of time.
No, like the cost of a Big Mac increases every 2 years.
Well, not necessarily, because automation reduces the prices of goods, and so
right, no, but it has increased. No.
Well, I don't know.
Big Mac in 1960 cost $1. Now it costs $4, right?
Well, yes, but it's not as simple as that.
No, I know. I'm oversimplifying.
Yeah,
right?
It's not as simple as that.
Right. The cost of goods does increase, right?
Yes.
However, easy, cheap consumer goods that fill non-necessary holes in our lives does overall, increase with inflation, but not exceedingly, right?
Okay.
The cost of, dust bins and trash bags increases at a steady rate that's almost equal to inflation, right?
Yeah.
However, the cost of goods that are necessary for our lives increases at a much higher rate. Costs of healthcare, costs of living, and costs of education.
But there's nothing saying that the cost per materials, the money that you save on those materials that you're buying, because the material goods have gotten cheaper compared to because inflation isn't a very good indicator, right? Because although the value of the dollar is decreasing, the cost per materials is also decreasing. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, but what
I'm trying to get at is the materials, the money that you save on your materials, while your rent is going up, the cost of materials for groceries, for other things, makes up for the cost of the increase in your apartment. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, but I think that we're ignoring one big thing here.
What?
And that's wages.
Okay.
Right? The amount of money you make for your labor. has stagnated, right? When you adjust for inflation, the average worker makes just as much as they did in 1970.
Okay. While
Right.
that's true, again, the materials that you're buying are cheaper. And so
Not the necessary ones.
not the
Not
necessary,
rent,
okay.
not
Not rent,
healthcare,
okay.
not
So
education.
the money that you save on the materials, the money, okay, let me just put some actual numbers on this,
Yeah.
right? So we can really visualize
Yeah.
this. So let's say the cost per toilet paper, right, has gone down compared to the inflation.
I honestly don't. I mean,
See, we don't
we've
really
no-
have evidence
I'm
on
gonna
this.
look it up, bro.
Yeah,
I'm
wanna
gonna
look
look
at
it
it?
up. Yeah.
Okay.
Average cost of goods over time.
Okay.
Right? All right. Keep talking.
What my theory is that although the wages have stagnated, they've stayed the same, and the price for necessities has gone up, that the price for wants has gone down. And so the money that you save on your wants helps provide more money to the necessities. Okay? What is it saying, Eric? Do you see it?
U.S. cost of living. You don't have any good graphs, bro. It's all numbers.
It's all numbers.
Okay. Yeah, it's gonna take us a minute to find good stuff.
How about this? How about we do some research on this?
Yeah.
And we'll come back on another
come back
podcast.
to it later, right?
And we'll actually have some numbers and some data
Yeah,
to show for it.
Yeah.
But let me just
Because
feel like-
I think we're making lots of assumptions here.
Yeah,
you
we
say
are.
that the cost of goods is decreasing. I
yeah,
say
and we don't
it's,
know.
It's pretty much stagnant,
yeah,
right?
It's, we're just kind of we're getting like caught up on like actual evidence that we don't know.
Fuck evidence. Bro. That's my theory. You know what I mean?
It's all based on
keep
what
it
we
all
think.
in the clouds. Yeah.
So we'll come back to this on another week with actual numbers.
Yeah.
And we'll figure out whether or not whether or not people's money that they have to spend on wants is actually decreasing.
Yeah.
Right. But I feel like we should wrap this up because I'm kind of getting
getting a little tired here.
Getting a little tired. So let me put some closing remarks on what I think of postmodernism.
Yeah. Oh, one sec. Before we do that, before we go to closing remarks, I'd like to apologize for something I said on the past a past podcast. Right, we were talking about transgender people, and I don't want to get into that discussion.
I need to apologize too.
Right. I categorized gender dysphoria as a mental illness, and that has a lot of negative connotations to it. That mental illness is a bad thing, and that those that are mentally ill are less than those that are not. And I did not want to imply that. I think that pretty much everybody in this country and the world suffers from some kind of mental illness, whether it be depression or anxiety, and that because someone has a mental illness, they are not less than those that do not. And that's just something I want to reinforce, that mental dysphoria should not be the base for discrimination, and that because someone has a mental illness, they deserve sympathy and help from those that do not.
Yeah. Okay, and I also want to apologize on the exact same topic of transgenderism for saying the word biological factors too much. I listened to it back and I'm like, I was getting pissed off at myself for saying biological factors over and over again.
Yeah.
And I also want to apologize if I sounded unsympathetic to people who do have this this problem in their life.
Yeah.
Because it certainly is a real problem, and there
Yeah.
are people who do suffer from it,
Yeah.
and they deserve sympathy.
Yeah, and we want to use the golden rule:
treat
others
the way
as you
should be
want to be
treated.
treated, right?
Yep,
And
yep.
In order to uphold that, we need to be sympathetic and look out for the rights of others.
Definitely.
And essentially, help the oppressed.
All right, Nick. All right, do you just want to wrap it up on that?
Yeah,
I feel like
it's
we're
a
good.
good note to end it on.
Yeah, but next week,
closing
stay tuned.
remarks. Hit me with your postmodern closing remarks.
My closing remarks, postmodernism. My closing remark would be this: it seems to me that the list of oppressed people keeps growing, and there's no general consensus, even between a majority of people who agree upon the same thing. There's no real implementation of how the oppressed react to the oppressors. And I don't believe it's very good for a society to view the lens of people who have more than you, whether it be more money, more resources, whatever, right? I don't think it's a very good lens to say they are oppressing me in some way. Because if you believe that, then the logical step that follows after that is, well, why don't I just go out and kill them? Because they're oppressing me. And I don't think it's a far stretch. I think it's happened before in the past. And if we continue through this narrative that I'm oppressed and everyone else around me is my oppressors, and that I'm short and this person's tall, that means he has something over me, and that he shouldn't have something over me because we should all be equal in a certain way, I don't think that's very good. And I think it's instantly murderous, and it has been instantly murderous. And 100 million deaths are enough for me to know that is bad.
Okay. I think that the reason the quote-unquote list of oppressed people has grown is because society is waking up and realizing just how many groups of people are disenfranchised by the majority, right? I think that as we recognize and tackle issues of oppression, we continue to take notice and wake up to other groups that are also disenfranchised by the majority. And I don't know, I think that ultimately those that use the lens of, oppressor, oppressee, it cannot be applied on, an individual level of, that person's oppressing me, therefore I should kill them. But I think that it's a beneficial way to look at groups of people, because, like I said earlier, in order to tackle unjust hierarchies, you first need to recognize that there are hierarchies and they are unjust. And using the oppressor-oppressee narrative is a good tool in that process. Now, should it be applied to everybody in every situation? No. But I think that in the case of tackling unjust hierarchies and in the pursuit of making our society a more just, more equitable society, it is a powerful tool in that process. Yeah.
All right. I think that was a pretty good closing remarks.
Pretty good. Yeah.
I feel like we covered a lot today. What are we talking about? Cops? We're talking about...
Yeah, fuck those cops.
yeah, that was pretty much our whole point.
Yeah.
Hate cops.
Yeah.
We talked about cops. We talked about coronavirus. We talked about Super Tuesday. We talked about a lot, man.
Yeah.
That was a really fun podcast.
Yeah. Good stuff. Nice talking to you.
How long have we been going for?
It's 12 now. You want to grab lunch after this? I'm free till 4.
Yeah. 2:30. 2 hours, 30 minutes.
Fuck Al Cali?
Yeah.
That's
the move. All right, guys. Thank you so much for listening. This is the Outlet Podcast. If you made it this far, we love you.
Yeah.
Like,
Thank you.
Thank you. Like, I feel like...
Hit us with a comment.
Yes, someone commented on one of our posts the other day. I saw it. I was like, man, this guy's awesome.
Yeah, I know. But yeah, we said lots of dumb stuff.
Oh yeah,
both of us.
Oh yeah.
I made bad points.
Oh yeah.
Right?
Oh yeah.
Lots of bad points.
I said biological factors like 50 times.
we want you to be a part of the conversation.
Yeah.
We don't want this just to be a one-on-one conversation. No. When we're talking about these broad ideas, these broad theories, the more minds working on it, the better.
Definitely.
The easier we're gonna be to reach the truth. And if you hear something that you think was wrong and
point it out.
Point it out.
And then we'll
let
address
us know.
it.
We'll address it in the next one. And we want this to be a big conversation, not just
Absolutely.
between me and Gabe, but between all of us. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like that's kind of been like our goal with this channel is just like we want people to have these ideas and to be thinking about it.
Yeah.
Because it really affects you if you don't think about these things.
And I mean it's easy to, just have these ideas in your own head and just to continue to believe them without voicing them. But when you do voice them, you say a lot of dumb stuff, right? And I think that that's the thesis of this podcast, that it's important to voice your opinions so that they can be picked at and use the Socratic method to find the truth in them and find what is not truthful in them. And,
Definitely.
That's what we've been trying to do. And through the process of this podcast, I've realized that I say a lot of dumb stuff and I have a lot of dumb beliefs, and they need to be picked apart and put under the Socratic microscope, per se. And, we want you guys to be a part of that and, join us.
Join us
in this conversation. Yeah.
I think that's a very good, it's a good summary. All right, man.
Definitely.
And if you enjoyed this podcast, make sure to give it a subscribe and a like and,
YouTube shows.
I hate plugging because I kind of feel, I feel like, and also, feels kind of scummy doing it.
Also, I don't feel like anyone's listening to this.
No, who cares? But anyways, hey, write us a comment, like, and subscribe if you like the video. And thank you for tuning in every Friday.
Definitely.
All right. Peace out. This has been Gabe.
And Eric.